Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Clovis City Council meeting of January 17th. It is not a Monday night, in case you were confused. It's really Tuesday. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for joining on the web. For those of you that are on the web and on the phone, welcome to all who are engaging with us tonight. So the first up on our agenda is the flag salute, and it will be led by Councilmember Basco. Thank you, Matt. Roll call, Carrie.
Councilmember Basco. Here. Councilmember Bessinger. Here. Councilmember Monitor. Here. Councilmember Pierce. Here. And Mayor Ashbeck.
I'm here. First up on our agenda tonight are public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on any matter within our jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda, and we ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. And I will take the privilege of introducing our first public comment speaker, Larry Salinas, with State Senator Chancellor's Office, who's here to introduce our new Clovis Community College president. So, Larry, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of the Council. I'm Larry Salinas. I'm the Executive Director of Governmental Relations at State Center Community College District. State Center has the privilege of having California's very first community college at Fresno and its newest college in Madera. But we're not here to talk about them. We're here to talk about Clovis Community College. And I have the privilege of introducing Clovis Community College's newest president, Dr. Kim Armstrong. And I'm delighted to see that we may have some future Clovis Community College students in the audience here. So it is really indeed a privilege for me to be here to represent Chancellor Goldsmith and to introduce our exciting and wonderful new president. So without further ado, Dr. Armstrong.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Larry. Good evening, Mayor, Council, men and women. It is my pleasure to stand before you as the new president of Clovis Community College, where we, like you, believe in excellence. Excellence in our academic programs. As you know, that we are 5 years in a row leading the state in our transfer rates, Clovis Community College. You also know that we hold that same esteem for our Hispanic and our African American students. So very, very proud of this college. On a personal note, I want you to know that I knew about you when I came to interview. It was during Hispanic Heritage Month, and I heard the great things the chief was doing. It's rare when you see a police department partner with the city and have on TV their promotion of Hispanic Heritage Month. So I was very, very proud when I saw you get the award this past weekend. Again, this is the excellence that you talk about in Clovis. I am a resident of Clovis. I live somewhere between Shaw and Barstow and what's the other street? Logan. I'm somewhere. I don't know. I'm somewhere. Okay.
As long as you can find your way home,
I don't know about that either. And there's a wonderful dog park. Was it Sierra Bison? Yes. That's where I get a chance to go. I believe in living, working, and shopping and playing where I live. I hope to continue the legacy of Dr. Bennett and being a very active participant and partnership in the community where I live and where I get a chance to work. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to working with you throughout many, many years. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We just have one complaint about Clovis Community College. It's on the wrong side of Willow. If you could help us out with that, it'd be great.
I think I can.
Okay, I know. If anybody can, I think it's you.
And I forgot to say that we do have goodie bags on behalf of the college for you, so thank you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to run into Dr. Armstrong. I think like this is the fourth time in 3 days. So welcome to Clovis. We're really happy that you're here. And thank you, Stephanie, and team for the bags. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Please, Mr. Bro.
My name is Charles Bro. I've been here on several occasions regarding the safety of children going to school because I've almost been killed now 3 times in crosswalks in school zones at Gettysburg School near where I live when I was walking my dog. I have talked to Mr. Negretti in the Public Works Department. I talked to Scott Redelfs. I've talked to Chief Fleming on the phone. I've talked to Mr. Harrison over in engineering. And I feel as though while some progress may be being made, that it seems as though the mills of the gods grind slowly is the way they usually talk about the government. And I feel that Mr. Harrison is very sincere in the direction in which he wants to go. He said that on a quarterly basis he meets with the police chief and with the head of public works and with himself and Mr. Cross, I believe his second in command, and that they discuss the safety of the city in general. I didn't catch the date on which they meet. I, as a citizen of the city, would certainly like to sit in on one of those meetings if the city clerk could notify me. The letter that I've given you is dated January 17th and is intended to replace a letter which I had dated January 10th. After my discussion with Mr. Harrison, I realized that there were a couple of changes which should be made, and there is an indented paragraphs down in the body of this letter, and they specifically address the idea of placing restrictions on school zones. I had mentioned, I think the first night I was here, that I thought school zones should all be 25 miles an hour all the time. Of course, on Shaw Avenue, that's not going to be possible. So I went back and I thought about it, and I thought, well, instead of doing something like that, which would outrage the entire public, that it would be better to propose perhaps that if there are 3 lanes of traffic going in one direction, that school would be exempted from a 25-mile-an-hour limit. But the side streets of any of those schools would still have a 25-mile-an-hour all-the-time limit. I've stated at this podium my reasons for feeling that a 25-mile-an-hour limit all the time would be a good idea for all of the schools. And I realize that you have the state to deal with, you have problems with crosswalks and signage and a variety of other matters. And I proposed to Mr. Harrison that perhaps it would be possible to co-budget with the schools, whereby they would provide a certain amount of money and that you would provide a certain amount of money, as you do now, and that their people could do all of the painting under the direction of the Public Works Director, so that they would be utilizing their resources instead of the scarce resources that are available to the City Public Works Department. If it were co-budgeted, it would also provide more services to the citizens of Clovis without any increasing expenditure to the people of the city of Clovis. It seems as though you'd be able to control your spending in that manner. I also, on the last line, had mentioned that I wish you'd pass a resolution to the effect to get this done. I think instead I would ask you to pass an ordinance. So I don't know whether any of you would want to offer that ordinance. I'm sure that you would want to talk to your public works directors and your chief of police and everybody else before doing so. But Mr. Harrison, I think, would be a good contact for any liaison between your board and your departments. And I would hope that he would be involved and the quarterly meeting group would be involved in ensuring the safety of our students. Like I say, I've almost been killed 3 times out there. And the last one that happened, the lady screeched to a stop feet away from me, doing 40, 50 miles an hour down Gettysburg Avenue. I crossed the crosswalk, and as she drove away, she yelled, "You don't have the right of way." Now, I was in a crosswalk in a school zone, and she came feet from killing me. And it's my understanding that there have been 11 children, I heard it on the radio, hit by cars in Fresno. and that they have a program called No Recess from Safety. Now, I'm not advocating that we start just another program. I'm advocating for a solution, and I hope that your council will be able to work in that direction.
Thank you for your comments and your work with Mike, and we do have a subcommittee that meets with Clovis Unified, so I think getting our kids to school safely is something we all share. So
if I talk to the city clerk, can I be notified? My email is so haywire right now that I would rather be contacted by text message. Could I ask that your city clerk do that?
I don't know about
I'd like to hear what they have to say.
I don't think we have a quarterly meeting scheduled yet with the school district, and they are publicly noticed. So I don't know if we have the capability to send you a text, but Carrie's shaking her head no.
Not text, but I can send Mr. Bro a letter.
We can send you a letter.
Thank you very much.
Regular mail, to let you know when that is.
Okay.
Thank you for your work on this. Appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Something that's not on our agenda tonight.
There's going to be 3 of us, I think, total. 3 more of us? Hi.
Okay. Hi.
I'm Cheryl Madrano. I've been here before.
Yeah.
Seen a couple of you guys. But today, so I'm standing here in front of you today, not just as a resident of Clovis, but as a daughter, a wife, a mother, a sister, a friend, and most of all, a human being. However, since the nightmare on Sunnyside began when our house flooded, we've been felt nothing of the sort. From the first interaction with the city employee to the countless others, it has been one misstep after another, after another, after another. From the workers suggesting I take pictures of the flood, of my son's room, to put baby pictures in, when his baby book was floating in water, still submerged as he makes jokes, to the third-party insurance adjuster, Suzanne Johnson, that she let us know one day. I called her on a weekend. She said, "Oh, we don't work on weekends." I'm sorry, neither do the council members. You guys will have to wait till Monday. This was when the mold in our home was overpowering us. Excuse me, sorry. We naively allowed city officials, attorneys, even though they misrepresented themselves, an appraiser who also misrepresented himself, into our home, ignorantly believing that they were actually there to help us, only to find out that the entire time they were trying to find a way to justify why 2 million gallons of water lost that night didn't have an effect on our homes, how they could justify not fixing what they broke. One of the employees with me was talking with me in the backyard, and we were explaining to him where the water went, and it was my mid-thigh, mind you, in my backyard, because we are the lowest point in all the 4 homes, well, the 3 homes here that were damaged. And he asked me, he turned, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Does it do this when it rains?" And I laughed. I said, "Are you serious? Like, that's a real question?" No, it doesn't do this when I rain. But in our counteroffer, I went ahead and provided you guys with the pictures from this last storm to show that the only puddle that is on our property right now from all of this rain is from when your guys' engineers came and took a soil sample. So the only puddling on any of our properties is literally just from the spot that you guys did a soil sample from. The water that flowed through our yards, into our homes, into our sheds, our storages, our dog houses, destroyed so much more than just possessions. It has wreaked havoc on all of our lives. All of us, all of us, all of our lives have been turned into a daily struggle. I hope that no one ever has to go through the hurdles, cut through the red tape, and be stuck with the processes that you guys have in place and that we've been put through day in and day out. It's absolutely insulting that each time we are asked for something and we meet that expectation, we are then asked for something more and then something more, and then it's never going to end. It's back and forth all the time with no resolution for us, just more of us having to give you what you believe. Honestly, we believe that our daily lives don't go on at all. Obviously, they go on, but you guys go on like normal. After tonight, you probably won't even bat an eye, won't even remember us, won't even think about us until a closed session, until something arises that you need to deal with. That's what we are. We're an inconvenience. But we're not an inconvenience. We're people. This is our lives, our children's lives, my mom's life, my neighbors. It's our lives. And you guys, the city of Clovis has failed us. Over and over, you have failed us. Let me compose myself. Okay. So not only do we have to think about our daily lives and the disruption it brings on us, the stress mentally, but physically, our health. Our health. We stayed in our home for 43 days with mold, with it sinking. Our neighbor's still in her home with mold, sinkholes. Our neighbor, misplaced, had to live in with his son. I mean, and then for the city to suggest in the counters for us to sell them our property, a property that has been in all of our families. My grandparents worked hard for their property. Why would I sell it? Why would we give that away? And then to have our people sell it to a sell the property, put it in a nursing home, put your mom in a nursing home, put your dad in a nursing home. For that to be even a suggestion is disgusting. That it makes no sense to me how that was even brought up as a suggestion. That's just dehumanizing in itself.
Can I ask you to wrap your comments up?
Sure.
Thank you.
So we don't have the luxury of not having to think about the city. We don't have it. We don't have the luxury of not carrying a burden. We don't get the luxury of just the burden of my mom having her sixth cancer, or that we have to go, my son lives in my bedroom, that my mom lives in the living room, because you guys just keep wanting more and more and more. So I stand up here pleading tonight, not just as a human, but as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife, as a friend, and as a resident of this Clovis that some people hold in such excellence, that you guys really consider what we lost that night and how much you would really pay for it.
Thank you, Ms. Medrano. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is James Bruno Jr. This is my father, James Sr. Some of you know who I am, but I'd like to reintroduce myself. I'm a lifelong resident of Clovis, a proud military veteran, and I'm here to speak in regard to the incident of the water main breakage on January 6, 2022. The night the pipe broke, a Clovis police officer knocked on my dad's door around midnight. Thankfully, I was there. He told us that we might want to go get some sandbags because the water main burst and water is headed your way. I rushed out to get sandbags with my neighbor and his 10-year-old son. Thank you, Robert. And yeah, that's, I'm sorry. We were never offered any help by the officers. You know, they blocked off the street so no cars could drive through. But, you know, they watched us pretty much scramble through the chaos after that. No fire department came out to help my quadriplegic father out of his house. The water quickly rose and was soon at our ankles. So I threw my father over my shoulder and carried him up the driveway and put him in my truck while we fought the flood. The water rose for hours and flooded the neighborhood. Now this is January 6th. It was a very cold night and the water was nearly to our knees. And finally at 3 a.m. a city employee came out and struggled to turn off the water main, eventually did. Early the next morning, city representatives arrived and assured my father a quick resolution to this traumatic event. Ironically, that night was indicative of how the city of Clovis would handle this matter over the next year. The city managers were like those officers that watched us scramble through the chaos with no real help, but a couple of suggestions. The city council, unfortunately, has proven to be like the representatives that arrived the next day. They assured us everything would get resolved, as some of you have tonight. Yet these words carried no real weight. We were told to wait for the dirt to dry from Charles Johnson and Olson Construction. If we were any priority from the beginning, at some point we would have heard from the actual city manager. John Holt. Instead, this matter was delegated to Andy Hausler, the assistant city manager, and I didn't hear from Andy on my father's behalf until September. Now, this happened January 6th. January 3rd, I'm sorry. Although the city did take responsibility for the damages, we have yet to get anything written of confirmation that the house will be rebuilt. He has already said that he doesn't want to sell his house as Cheryl Madrano and Sherry Persons have. My dad wanted to present his counteroffer to you city members rather than someone else, because after meeting with the assistant manager and his lawyer, he didn't get any confirmation that he would get his house back. Rather, he was afraid the city would make him sell it, or, as Mr. Hausler suggested, go into a nursing home. They're really nice. Perhaps that was not the intended result of Andy and Chester Wall's meeting, but reverting to the possibility of my dad selling or finding a nursing facility is not what we expected to hear. After we had been clear, and we met at the planning meeting with the builder, made it very clear that my father wanted his house rebuilt. It's as if no progress has been made to move forward. My father and his neighbors involved, including the Madranos and Miss Persons, are tired of the games, the stalling, the false assurances. I am not sure how you expect a disabled man, a single mother, a family of 8, to do all the legwork of finding our own contractors, looking for alternative housing, and putting together counteroffers. All of this is beyond our scope. I hope that the city council members can see that we have all had to go through a lot. All we want is to be made whole from this situation. You've already accepted that this is the fault of the city. I have the counteroffers here. If I could approach and...
I'm going to ask you to give them to the city attorney. If you don't mind, our city clerk, thank you.
And my father has a brief comment. He has a speaking device, so you want to push the button?
Please, I want my home back and do not want to be homeless. I do not want to live in a nursing home. Please, I want my home back and do not want to be homeless. I do not want to live in a nursing home.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, I am James Barundas's daughter-in-law and caretaker. Okay, to the new council members, I'd like to give you a broader perspective towards 142 Sunnyside Avenue. It was a home and stability for Dad, but now he has no home and he has no peace because in a month, the lease to the apartment that the city provided temporarily will be due. He has many health conditions. He has COPD, leukemia, heart disease. He's quadriplegic, he's nonverbal, and the list continues. However, since the incident with your water main and losing his home, he had to live in my house for 5 months. We were told to give it a few weeks to let the dirt dry. Weeks turned into months, and we were not prepared to turn our living room into a nursing home, but we kept patiently waiting for a resolution. With James in my living room, my kids lost their space, my job came home with me, and it became a 24-hour job. After quarantining for 2 years straight, we bought tickets to go to Europe. Our kids had put their lives on hold to keep Grandpa safe, and we wanted to reward them for being strong and selfless. It was a light at the end of the tunnel, the promise of being as far away from the walls that contained them for so long. The date for the trip came and went. Grandpa was still in the living room, and we never fulfilled our promise to them. It's now been over a year since he lost his home, and James is no closer to getting any verbal or written confirmation that he will not end up in the streets. Our last meeting with Chester and Andy did not make James feel well. He was very concerned because rather than talk about rebuilding because his home is no longer inhabitable, they again entertained the idea that James should sell and insisted that he consider a nursing home, in specific, the Magnolia home Andy helped open. I really wished he hadn't suggested that because James has a history of traumatic experiences with those places after his stroke and heart surgery. Knowing this, I tried making light of the conversation, knowing that James would plead with us not to let that happen. Mr. Hausler, you overstepped your boundary. As his primary source of care, I have seen how much being removed from his house has affected him mentally and physically. He used to have an electric chair. He used to go and get around his house and yard. He loved to go outside every day and water his oleanders. Watering them was the only home chore he could cooperate with, the only pride and ownership he could contribute to. He loved sitting in the sun because his doctor told him it was good for his bones. He's now stuck in an apartment with nothing to look forward to. He used to have 2 little Chihuahua Terriers named Billy and Bella. He loved them, and he lost them too. With no stable home, he had to give them away, and they were his only companions. How do you think that a man with so many physical issues is dealing with all of this that has happened to him? How do you think that this affects his mental state? How would you deal with it, being trapped in your body, not able to speak for yourself? Since this happened, it has been my husband and I who have been involuntarily delegated to perform all tasks concerning this matter. This is all very stressful for James and my family. We all understand that what happened last January was not intentional. However, it was your pipe that broke and ruined 3 homes. The city took responsibility for it, but at this point, I'm not sure what that means. To quote the city roundup, the people that make up Clovis are those who hold each other accountable for the standards and way of life that Clovis abides by. Please make this right for James and his neighbors.
Thank you. Last but not least.
Good evening, council members, both previous and new elected. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight to follow up in regards to the Sunnyside main water break that occurred January 3rd, 2022, and the structured damages to 3 homes.
Could you give us your name, please?
My name is Sherry Persons, and I live at 156 Sunnyside Avenue.
Thank you so much.
My plan tonight is to continue to interact with the City Council after I last spoke here at this podium November 7th, 2022. Since this date, I have had interaction with Andy Hostler in regards to demolishing and rebuilding a new home on my existing property. I continue to interact with my building contractor and create a reasonable counteroffer for the cost of demolition and rebuild. As I mentioned on November 7th, 2022 at the council meeting, in the exact words, to ask me to do a construction project is beyond my expertise. Therefore, the city should have started planning for a solution and resolution prior to 9 months. I feel the destruction that was caused to my home should have been handled like an insurance claim. I referenced this issue since I had 1 claim in the entire 33 years that I've been in my home. I called the insurance company immediately when I discovered the damage. The insurance company took action within 24 hours and gave me the choice of having their contractors do all the work, or I could choose my own. I chose their contractor since I had no knowledge of the process to repair my home. If my claim would have been a structural fire, the insurance company would have then replaced either the entire structure or repaired the salvageable area. If I damaged another person's property, I would be 100% responsible. My point is, since the city of Clovis is at fault 100% and self-insured was supporting outside insurance carrier, I feel I should have had the same response as I indicated in the example above. Based on the settlement offer received from Chester Walls on September 30th, 2022, it appears that Chester, who is part of the Ames Insurance, has power and manipulation to detour the requested process of rebuilding my home. Also, my property is not classified as eminent domain, and I feel that this tactic from Chester was to take my property with the hopes I would disappear and the city would be able to wash their hands and not be accountable for their faulty water main destruction. I researched this law and how it pertains to California. I did a Google research in regards to this law. A few of the resources indicated in California, eminent domain gives the government the power to take your property even if you don't want to sell. However, under the Fifth Amendment, eminent domain must be for the public use, which traditionally meant projects like roads or bridges. If I wanted to sell my property, I would have obtained a realtor and been able to sell for more than the fair market value that I was offered. On December 21st, 2022, myself, James Berinda, also known as Elliot, and our contractor, we both have the same contractor, attended the Development Review Committee, DRC, with the Planning Department. After the meeting, myself and Elliot and our contractor had a conversation in the lobby with Andy and felt positive that these rebuild projects were in the process of moving forward. On December 22nd, 2022, I had a meeting with Andy and Chester to discuss my counteroffer that I had submitted. I was complimented on my spreadsheet and had included all the necessary costs to demolish and rebuild. Chester then asked me to create another comparison in regards to moving to a tract home, buying an older home, or option of selling. The last word I heard was selling, and I mentioned to him again that I was not interested in selling, and that should not be an option. I didn't do all this research to sell or purchase either a tract or older home. I made that very clear. All this work I had done on the counteroffer was not to get a response of buying or selling. It was only to replace my damaged and irreparable existing home. On January 8th, 2023, I submitted my final counteroffer to Andy with 3 comparisons as requested by Chester. I made sure Andy would have time to preview prior to the January 9th, 2023 closed meeting regarding the Sunnyside water damage. Also, as an FYI, the tract and the previous owned homes were more than double of a rebuild. On January 9th, 2023, I received a call from Andy to discuss details on the comparison counteroffer. I answered all of his questions and mentioned again that I need to think about moving ASAP as my house is surrounded by water with still an expanding sinkhole. He mentioned that hopefully we would have an answer soon from City Council. Well, here's a side note. I have not been able to move since I don't have the funding for deposit, first and last month's rent, or the monthly rental expense. My house payment is only $850, and rentals are an average of $2,200 per month.
Sherry, could you wrap up?
I'm almost done.
Good, thanks.
I understand that tonight is another closed meeting to discuss the Sunnyside water damage. The agenda indicates that there's a conference with legal counsel and anticipated litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9, parentheses D, parentheses 2. So I researched the meaning of this code, and the short version is litigation is considered pending when a point has been reached based on existing facts. We would like to know from the City Council what has been reached after a year and 3 weeks of waiting for answers to rebuild and move forward with our lives. Almost done. Does this mean all of my counteroffer revisions were a waste of time? Does this mean the planning department was not true to the words of removal and rebuild? Does this mean that we as victims have no rights? Does this mean the City of Clovis self-insurance or outside insurance company could care less about our circumstances? Does this mean that the city is full of hot air with empty promises? Does this mean the city was stalling so we would give in and take the fair market value and disappear? Does this mean that the city doesn't have to take full responsibility? Does this mean we have to obtain legal counsel, or can we take out all of the does this mean and have a date for rebuild? We would like to have a definite date and time to start the rebuild by the end of this week. So to the City Council sitting in front of me, what is the expected date we will hear from you after tonight's closed meeting and the result of rebuilding our homes? Please give us a reason to spread the word that Clovis is a way of life, and know that our tax dollars that the city collects would reflect a positive representation from the City Council to honor us citizens that still have destroyed homes after 1 year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sherry. Anyone else? So you, those that are speaking on this issue, you know we can't comment on it because it's public comment, so you are speaking to us and we hear you. I will ask the city attorney just to comment on the closed session item, as he will at the end of our agenda tonight. So David, can you speak to the closed session item in terms of will we report out on action that's taken, or will there be no action taken? Can you comment on that?
There probably won't be action taken, but we will consider the claims and the offer we received tonight and the same one that we received before. So those will definitely be considered, and the council will look at those and decide what action to take or what's the next steps. But that's something the council will discuss in closed session.
I think it's, I mean, I don't know that we can give you a specific date, which is the most annoying answer I can possibly give you. I totally get that. Do you have any timeline, or Andy, maybe do you want to comment on any timeline that you're operating with?
I would just say that staff, based on how the meeting goes tonight, staff will reach out to the three parties and provide you feedback on more specific timing. We have made significant progress, with, specifically with Ms. Persons, and we're hoping to get some direction from City Council.
So I think until we have the conversation, we don't know. Again, I'm sure that's dissatisfying, but our job right now isn't to give you an answer for something we don't know anything about the conversation. So thank you for coming. I know that's of little consequence either. We hear you, so appreciate you coming down here tonight. Yeah, yeah. All right. Is there anyone else in the chambers with a public comment about something that's not on our agenda? Please. And then I will also ask online if there's anyone who wants to make a public comment. I have a public comment. It's cold in here. I told you, Carrie, I'd get cold. I said, stop it. I was hot 10 minutes ago. I don't know how. Please.
My name is James Renna. I live in Fresno, and well, I mean, this really doesn't pertain to the city of Clovis yet, but I was at Mike's Pizzeria a couple days ago, and somebody slipped something into my drink. I ended up in the hospital. Okay, long story short, I don't feel safe in Fresno anymore, so I'm planning on moving to Clovis. And, yeah, I mean, this is the first time, you know, something like this has happened to me. I'm not lying. I mean, I've got it on Yelp, you know, Mike's Pizzeria. Facebook, James Renna. If anybody wants to, you know, look at it, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it's, you know, unsettling, you know, unnerving. Yeah, I mean, you can't even, you know, I mean, it's just something that, you know, I had to get off my chest. And, I mean, the more people that know about it, you know, I mean, if I've got a bullet on my back, you know, I mean, I pissed somebody off, I know that. I mean, not enough to, you know, warrant this type of behavior, but, you know, I mean, I'm planning on, you know, moving, you know, Clovis. It's a safer community, downtown Clovis. Yeah, I mean, and so apparently this will be on the public record, or is that correct? Or?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
I was trying to find out the Fresno City Council meeting. I'll go there next. Yeah, I mean, I went to the DA's this morning, and and they said, well, how's your spleen? You know, because apparently they put, you know, something to sedate me in there, and I said, well, I mean, I didn't even think of that. You know, my spleen's fine. You know, I mean, I'm in good health. You know, I recovered, but yeah, I mean, something like this, you know, has never, you know, never happened to me before. Yeah, I mean, the neighborhood I live in, you know, it's run down, you know, and it's kind of like the grace of God, you know. I mean, because a couple of days ago, a friend of mine had business in Atlanta. And so she said, you know, will you take care of my dog, you know, watch my house? And, you know, I mean, sure, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm out of that neighborhood, you know, I mean, I go to drop my wife off today, and, you know, there's some guy parked down the street, you know, and I don't know if, you know, if they're gonna, you know, attempt, you know, on my wife, you know, I called the neighbor, and, you know, so he's, you know, going to watch, yeah, because me and my wife are separated, but I don't know, Fresno, I mean, it's...
Can I ask you to wrap up?
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, that's all I have to say then. Okay.
5 minutes goes just like that.
Okay, that's my 5 minutes then, huh?
That's
all
it.
right, and I met Mrs. Pierce at a party, the Armenian Christmas party, yeah. I didn't even realize that she was married to Elvis, you know what I mean? That was kind of a funny coincidence, but all right. Well, thank you, folks, and I just want to get that off my chest. And
thank you very much.
I mean, is there any more comments, or is the meeting over? Or?
Oh no, we haven't even started really. This is public comment, and then we'll move into our agenda items. So thank you for being here, and you can find the City Council Fresno meeting schedule on their website. I think it's Thursdays.
Yeah. I'm going to go there next. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I mean this, you know, I mean nobody should have to, you know, live in fear. You know, I mean, yeah. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Any other public comment on an item that isn't on our agenda? Anybody online?
No.
And just for the record, I want to acknowledge one letter that we received from Matthew Bartell speaking on the wall on the east side of Butterfly Gardens. And I think that staff has returned the email to Mr. Bartell. I just want to get these on the record, since otherwise we won't have a way to notice them. Am I not paying attention here? Is there more?
The wall repair is in work right now.
And there's another one from Melanie Morales, and speaking about problems with an Airbnb next to the home that they've lived in. So thank you to those two folks for submitting their public comments. All right, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. With respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance. And unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading shall be deemed waived by unanimous consent of the council. The next item is consent calendar. These items are routine in nature and considered by one vote, and a vote in favor of the consent calendar is a vote in favor of all the items on that calendar. Anyone on the City Council wishing to pull an item on the consent calendar? Anyone in the audience wishing to pull an item on the consent calendar? Anyone online?
No.
All right. I'll bring it back to the council for consideration of the consent calendar. Take a motion, please.
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I forgot to vote aye. Public hearings. One public hearing item tonight. This is an item that we consider in public session at a regular meeting of the City Council. So the item tonight is consider an appeal of CUP 2022-005. Consideration of a resolution denying a request by George Beal to overturn the Planning Commission's approval of CUP 2022-005, which allows a 24-hour convenience store and sale of liquor and alcoholic beverages for off-site consumption on property located on the northeast corner of North Temperance Avenue and Owens Mountain Parkway. And consider finding of Class 32 notice of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. Dave Verk, LLC, is the owner applicant. Bottom Line Group, LLC, Seth Ramirez, owner's representative. George Beal, Beal Developments, LLC, is the applicant of appeal. And this item has been continued twice from December 19th, 2022 and January 9th, 2023. And it looks like we are ready to hear it tonight. So staff on this is Marissa Jensen, but I bet she got a partner. So it looks like Dave is going to start us off.
Indeed. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I did want to just take a moment to introduce to you our new assistant planner in the planning division. Marissa Jensen has been with us for a number of months now. She started with us in August, and she's doing a great job with us so far. This is her first opportunity to appear before your body, the council. She's been to the Planning Commission and handled a variety of internal staff administered projects as well.
Oh, welcome, Marissa. He told you this was an opportunity. Yeah, that was good how you framed it. Just an opportunity for you to come here.
It's always exciting, always exciting.
Welcome. Congratulations on your new job.
Marissa's going to present the bulk of the presentation this evening as the project manager for this project. But I did want to just give you a brief introduction to the topic of conditional use permits. These permits are really what is at subject of the discussion this evening, and the type of permits that were approved by the Planning Commission and then appealed to your body. So I just want to give you a brief background on what these are and why they're in front of you this evening, or why this one is in front of you this evening. In brief, there are some land uses in our development code that are only permitted or allowed subject to the issuance of a conditional use permit. And those are the kinds of uses that generally have the potential to vary in their characteristics and their compatibility. So that basically means these are some kinds of uses that may not fit in on every parcel just because of its zoning, and uses like a hotel or a car wash or a church, for instance. Sometimes you might have a church, as an example, that's 2,500 square feet, and sometimes you might have a church that's 25,000 square feet, and sometimes it might be located 10 feet away from a residential neighborhood, and sometimes it might be a half a mile from a residential neighborhood. And so the conditional use permit process allows us to take into consideration the specific details of a project, including how intense it is, what kind of traffic it generates, as an example, and how the characteristics of the site play into that. And the purpose is to make sure that the specific components of that use are compatible with its surrounding area and don't result in any negative effects that can't be otherwise addressed. In approving a conditional use permit, certain findings are made. Those are basically the issues of compatibility and public welfare and so forth. And when the Planning Commission reviews and makes a decision on those findings, they have to affirmatively address those findings in the resolution, which was done in this case. The City Council only gets involved with the conditional use permit when it is appealed by an interested party. So that might occur when there's a neighbor that has some concerns that weren't addressed, and they appeal an approval. It could also come to you in the event that an applicant doesn't like a condition of approval, or if it's an unusual circumstance would be if a CUP is denied, that could be also appealed to you. So it's pretty unusual that you see a conditional use permit. I don't think in the nearly 3.5 years I've been with the city, you've seen, your council has seen an appeal of this type. You've seen a couple of appeals on maybe site plans during the last handful of years, but any appeal is pretty rare. When these kind of items do come to you, they require you to make the same consideration to the findings that the Planning Commission made, and Marissa will go through those this evening, or at least give you a brief background. So unless you have any questions generally about conditional use permits, I'll hand the presentation over to Marissa, and she'll give you some background on this particular project.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. On October 27th, the Planning Commission approved 3 CUPs associated with a proposed development at the northeast corner of Temperance and Owens Mountain Parkway. This is part of the Sunrise Pavilion Planned Commercial Center. The CUPs approved for the proposed development were CUP 2022-007, which approved the addition of 24-hour uses to the use schedule for the Sunrise Pavilion Center. CUP 2022-004 approved a quick service restaurant with a drive-through for the east building, over here. And then CUP 2022-005 approved a convenience store with fuel and alcohol sales, a drive-through, and a 24-hour use for the west building. This building over here. And this is the subject of the appeal. During the October 27th Planning Commission meeting, the commissioners had no major comments or concerns based on the information that was presented to them. The appellant, Mr. Beal, was present at the hearing and spoke against the project. His concerns included the sale of alcohol and the 24-hour operation proposed for this project, which is located across the street from his business. He expressed that there is no need for a 24-hour convenience store in this area. Mr. Beal expressed concern regarding the number of liquor licenses within the tract, in addition to the close proximity of the proposed convenience store to his. Also, he expanded on the restrictions that ABC and the Clovis Police Department placed on his liquor license, including having a limitation on the size of bottles sold within the store. Concerns described are similar to those in Mr. Beal's appeal letter. Ultimately, however, the Planning Commission approved CUP 2022-005 by a vote of 5-0. The issue of alcohol sales has been a key factor in this appeal. The off-site sale of alcohol requires approval by ABC for a liquor license. The police department handles all matters regarding ABC and liquor licenses. They have the ultimate discretion of the approval. Staff and the police department originally recommended approval of the alcohol license based on the information provided by ABC. The police department and ABC informed staff before the Planning Commission meeting that 4 off-site liquor licenses were allowed in the census tract with 2 existing, meaning that there would be availability for 2 more. This project is located in Census Tract 55.12. Because of this information, the police department did not provide any comments or conditions. However, after the appeal was submitted, staff inquired again with ABC about the status of licenses within the tract. New information was provided that there are actually 6 existing licenses in the tract, meaning that the tract is oversaturated by 2 active licenses. ABC confirmed that the previous information they provided was incorrect. Due to this new information, the police department can no longer support the liquor license. Therefore, staff is requesting that the council modify the conditions to prohibit the sale of alcohol. In regard to the hours of operation, staff is unable to support the appellant's statement that the 24-hour operation will change the character of the area. The difference in hours of operation is not significant enough that it would be considered a substantial deviation from existing characteristics of the area. Additionally, the 24-hour operation may be beneficial to the nearby hospital staff, California Health Science University students and faculty, City Fire Station 5, and other visitors to the area. This area is growing with mixed-use commercial and technology uses. For this reason, a 24-hour operation would be complementary. Based on the findings stated in the staff report, the new information from ABC, and the police department's opposition, staff is recommending that the City Council deny a request by George Beal to appeal the project and uphold the Planning Commission's approval of CUP 2022-005 with a modification to Conditions 1 and 2 to prohibit alcohol sales as outlined in the resolution. Thank you, and I will be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thanks, Marissa. Questions for staff? Bong?
Yes, thank you, Marissa, for that report. Procedurally, CUP 2022-007 was the one that approved the 24 hours, but the appeal only lists the 005, so technically it's not an issue then, I'm assuming, but yet we went ahead and still addressed it, and you addressed it as well. So were we not technical enough in how the appeal went, so that way both of those should have been brought up and then examined tonight, or it still works?
So CUP 2022-007 added the 24-hour uses to the use schedule. So now any business in the Sunrise Pavilion PCC would be able to get a CUP approved, and they would be able to do 24-hour operations. So we just had to include CUP 2022-005 just because it relates directly to this convenience store, if that makes sense.
So in other words, the appellant should have said, I don't agree also with 007 with the 24 hours CUP, so that way it can be addressed here, or because if it's already a CUP that's approved, it's pretty much an automatic because it's already in our list of things that can be 24 hours. So I know it's technical, but I want to make sure we're straight.
This was a question that kind of came up during the processing of the project and is one of the more confusing issues that we've dealt with, and we apologize for that. CUP 2022-007 created the opportunity for businesses, any business in that commercial area, to request a 24-hour use.
Okay.
The individual request for this site to have a 24-hour use is part of CUP 2022-005.
Okay.
So the opportunity for the whole center was 07, but the particular request for this business at this site was 2022-05.
Okay. With regards to sort of the saturation, oversaturation, I was really interested in sort of our policy statement on page 26. And it says, based on adopted city policy, the police department's decision on this matter, meaning of liquor licenses, is final and may not be appealed to the council. So does that mean if they said yes, it's unappealable? If they said no, it's unappealable if no one appealed it as well? Is that sort of how I understand that? And so if that's the case, how do we get 2 extra more than the 4 that was allowed? Because did it never come before us, those 2 extra ones? Or can you help explain sort of that policy? Because if it's unappealable, then...
I don't know that we have the answer as to how we got to the 6 existing licenses in the area. I'm not sure if the police department has investigated that or not. The police department representative that oversees that process is here. He may be able to speak to that issue. One way to kind of consider the relationship between the conditional use permit and alcohol sales is that the police department has kind of the ultimate veto on whether a site can have an ABC license or not. So the Planning Commission in general, or the City Council in this case, could allow the conditional use permit in terms of its operations to sell alcohol. And then that CUP applicant could then approach the police department and say, hey, my conditions of approval allow me to have alcohol. I'm ready to get my license. And the PD could then say, nope, you're over-concentrated, or, you know, we can't make the finding that it's in the city's interest. We're not going to issue you the license. So the PD has that kind of veto authority because they're the final touch to approve a license. Alternatively, there could be a scenario. I don't think it's likely to happen, but let me just say it very, very briefly, that the Planning Commission or the City Council could say, hey, there's not a situation here. We don't care what the PD says. Even if the PD is willing to issue a license, we don't think that operation is compatible with alcohol sales. So we can't make the conditional use permit findings if that's going to sell alcohol. So we're going to prohibit from a land use perspective and establish a condition that doesn't deal with over-concentration. It just basically says, no, you can't sell alcohol there because we think it would then make it incompatible from a land use operation perspective. I'm not sure if that answers the question or not, but I hope
so maybe the PD could help us understand how we got to 6. We can't help us understand how we got to 6. It's a mystery how we got to 6. Maybe they changed the census tract. I'm going to go with that. Come on. It's as good as any.
I know one of them was Aldi, and I think there was another store that was open.
Save Mart, CVS, Aldi.
Can I?
Yeah, of course.
I see like an Aldi or a store different than a 24-hour mini market. I see them as separate and apart from each other. I also, and maybe this is something that we need to discuss at some point, I think that there should be an appeal to the council for, I don't think that the police department should be the final say in that. There should be an appeal. We are the legislative body. I think we get to weigh in on it. And it could be They say yes, we say no. It could be any, but I'm not sold on that process.
Yeah, and that was I know that that's a separate discussion for another day potentially, but I wanted to make sure that that process was very clear, and so that way, I don't mind either way. I mean, if the PD is the absolute no, then we shouldn't be hearing some of these things, okay? And then we will have to change that policy to make it where it's different. And so, but I do want to know how we got 5 and 6 and then never caught it, and the rationale behind that, so that way we can understand if that rationale should apply now or not apply now, because I think that's where I'm lost, just the oversaturation, but why do we get to 6? And there was never the oversaturation discussion when it was number 5 and number 6. And so if we can answer that, I don't know if we want to answer it now or move on.
I'm not sure they can, but they're going to try.
Situation with ABC is pretty confusing. When I found out that we were oversaturated by at least 2, I believe that the information that I was provided was there were some conditions that went along with that. I'm not sure what the agreement was with ABC. In speaking with them, they provided me with the 6 stores. I actually thought I had it, but I don't have it today. But we are oversaturated by at least 2. So, and it was their recommendation, along with, we took their recommendation, they said no, based on that information. So I can't answer that question, to be honest with you.
So it doesn't, they can approve it before PD approves it?
And no, I asked about the recommendation. I said, what is the saturation level? They said it's 4. We're over by 2. What is your recommendation? They say, we don't recommend that you add another liquor license there, or the type 20 or type 21. Then we would
That's for this one, though?
Correct.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out
we would
5
be,
and 6.
actually, we're over by 2 now. If we added this one, we'd be at 7.
Okay.
We'd be over 3. I apologize.
Okay. And for this one...
Oh, wait, more.
All right.
Here comes
Yeah. I don't know the 6. I wish I did, but my understanding is that we have Bonds, Aldi's, a lot of store establishments, not 24-hour businesses in the census tract. So a lot of these have been there for 15, 20 years. So how we got to 6, I can't answer that because this has happened over a number of years. We can do the research on that. 2 years ago, I came before you guys to deny another request of an ARCO at Herndon and Clovis. That was also at 6, and at that time, I don't know how we got, and the request was saturation levels 4, but we were at 6. So we denied the ARCO at that point. The 6 are on here. Johnny Quick, Save Mart, Walgreens, Aldi's.
Chief forgot his glasses.
Yeah, well, 2 of them I can't read. Do you know what that is?
CVS.
CVS and...
Walgreens. Oh, that's the Shop and Go.
And then Shop and Go. So CVS, Aldi's, the Shop and Go, Save Mart, and then the Johnny Quick that's currently across the street from this development. So all of those have been 15, 20 years in excess. So I'm not sure how we got to that. I can't answer that. I can do the research and find that out. But this has also happened on a separate occasion prior to this a couple of years ago. We're in the same situation. And at that time, we were already oversaturated by 2, so we said we can't authorize this request. And because we did that 2 years ago with the ARCO, I find it extremely difficult in this situation to authorize the approval to add another additional license in excess. So that's why we requested that it be denied, just out of fairness for the businesses that have come prior.
And I'm understanding that you, meaning PD, can find a necessity or convenience and then authorize?
Correct.
More than whatever the recommended saturation level?
So if there's 4, ABC can say we approve it and approve it up to 4. Anything beyond that, we would have to author a letter saying that there's a necessity or convenience, and the PD authorizes that letter, and then we can go beyond what the ABC track is approved for. So let's say Johnny Quick 20 years ago was way out, and let's say Harlan Ranch is out there, and that's the only connection to any type of service. Maybe we authorize and author a letter to allow that to occur to service that area because there's nothing else out there. So out of a convenience, we can authorize that.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. That helps. And I guess my question, George, when you come up is, does this satisfy your request, or are you still wanting a total elimination of the CUP? When you come up, you can address that question, George, when you come up later. Yeah, when it comes back, I just wanted to pose that question now so you can prepare for it, that with the PD's recommendation, if that satisfies your second point with regards to the alcohol sales.
Thanks, Lon. Any other questions for staff?
I just have one, and it's unfortunately sort of along Vong's line of questioning with the oversaturation. Do we know what happened where we got the erroneous information from ABC to start with, why there was that issue and had to come back and correct it?
So before the Planning Commission meeting, I had reached out to ABC and also PD and got the wrong information. And so when I went back and spoke with them afterwards, there had been a federal redistricting of the census tracts, and supposedly there was a data issue, and so it kind of got lost. Is that what they said? So, yeah. Sorry. Does
that answer your question? Anything else for staff? Matt? Okay.
Do we know when the last time the census tract was actually updated by ABC? 2021? So it could have been possible that those numbers switched before the census tract. So at one time you might have only had 3 or 4, but then when they updated the census tract, it went to 6.
That's certainly possible. We don't know that that's accurate, but that's certainly possible. It would answer a lot of questions.
My understanding with the census tract is that as population grows within the city, then those tracts move. They move the lines, they add numbers, they do different things at which time. So you could have, started off with maybe having 2, but when they redid the census tract in 2021, now you've got 6. Would that be a fair assessment?
It's got to be possible.
Yeah.
All right, anyone on,
One more question for Marissa. Marissa, I guess bottom line, they wrote about a glitch in the system and then one of them being in California City, did you get a chance to assess that to see the validity of their comment with regards to why there's more in this census tract, or there might be errors because of it?
I am not familiar with the ghost licenses, I think that they're called, the ones that are in other cities. I do not have too much knowledge of those, I'm sorry.
Okay. And Orlando, if you can address that later when you come up, and then that way we can kind of understand what your argument is. Thanks.
All right, anything else for staff? All right, so we'll open the public portion. Now this item is, just to be clear to Vong's point, it's a resolution to deny your request, George, to overturn the approval of the CUP. That's the action before us. And I think the staff is recommending that we change just the conditions allowing alcohol sales. So I think that's what you're looking for clarity on. So we'll open the public portion. Anyone wishing to speak, I'm just going to say to this item. We have applicants and appellants, and so anyone would like to speak to this item, I would invite you to the podium. Could do rock, scissors, paper or something and see who's going to come first.
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Orlando Ramirez, 6781 North Palm, Suite 100. My son will usually be here, Seth Ramirez, but he's celebrating his 6th-year anniversary, so he didn't tell me, so I'm here. Your question, Vaughn, was again?
You spoke about the licenses and saying that because of the way 55.12 the track, that it listed something from California City, and then that might be a glitch in the system, meaning that it may not be accurate, or what were you trying to say here?
Right. Well, what happened is when I contacted Susan Medrano, who's a district representative or the district manager for ABC, let me go back a little. So when Fast Trip was the original applicant on this, they fell out of the deal. So we looked at their stats and the requirements they had, and we checked with ABC, and everything seemed like it was fine. We checked with ABC as a follow-up, Jay Verk did, and we were told, sure, there's 4 licenses available, there's 2 existing, there's room for 2 more, no problem. So we proceeded to purchase the property, put it in escrow, and we reached out to 3 of our clientele for potential operation. Everyone was on board. Then it came to light, I would happen to be out of town when Marissa and Lily contacted me and said, there's an issue. This was on December 15th. That was the first I was hearing that there was actually an oversaturation of ABC licenses for the district or for the census tract. Couldn't do anything about it. I was going to a Bulldog football game, and I was in the middle of a tailgate, and there was nothing I could do. It was Friday evening. So I said, we'll deal with it on Monday. So on Monday, we contacted Marissa and Lily, and they confirmed that there was, in fact, an issue. So what I did subsequent to that is I contacted Susan Medrano directly, and I said, Susan, what happened? And she explained to me that there was an error on their part, that they told Fast Trip incorrectly. They told Jay Verk, my partner, incorrectly about that there was enough licenses available. Then she actually said that she had told the police department incorrectly, or her staff had told the police department incorrectly, as well as planning staff. So that led us to, she said, now we have 6 on the site, which only allows for 4. So, of course, that created a dilemma for us. So we reached out, I did a summary, and that summary stated that, and speaking to Susan, I summarized that in 2021, the state of California, ABC, required that there be a redistricting review, reboundaries, taking some out of census tract, adding to a few to census tracts based on numbers. The state of California itself did about 14,000 of those throughout the state. They left the local agencies with the remaining 4,000 to address. Most of those were done. Unfortunately, 55.12 was one of the ones that was omitted from their review. It wasn't until after I had the discussion with Susan that she physically drove the site and said, uh-oh, we have a problem. There are 6 sites here. The issue we have is that 4 of those were issued to major retailers, as mentioned before. That left none available for the little guys. How we came to 6, I kind of have a history on that. Back 12, 15 years ago, the planning department actually reviewed the ABC licenses. We distributed and we would send it over to the police department for comment. If we don't get any comments within 2 weeks, we automatically assumed that was an approval. We did reach out to the police department 12, 15 years ago, and they would say, no comment, we're okay, and we would issue the license from planning department. It was about 11 years ago that I ran into a specific case, was a little contentious, and I said, we probably should not be reviewing these ABC licenses. This should be totally up to the police department, and policy was changed at that point, where now it became the police department's responsibility to see if there was a overconcentration or oversaturation. That's how we got to the 6. Again, I found it unfair that 4 of those were issued to large retailers, which made it really difficult for the little guys to also have that same operation. The dynamics of this location are excellent to have a beer and wine license. We initially started with type 21, but based on police concerns, and we talked to some of our potential clients, they said, we'll be okay with the type 20. Type 20 is just beer and wine, not full spirits. So we reduced our request to type 20. Even then, so I appreciate police staff reviewing this. We still got denied. They could not justify the PCN letter. We disagree, but I've worked 30 years with the Clovis Police Department in code enforcement. I am not ready to fight that battle. I respect them all. I've had the pleasure of working with many years back. So we will respect whatever the police department is recommending or requesting, but we do respectfully disagree in that we feel that this is an ideal location for a beer and wine license, that a type 20, understanding that you cannot sell alcohol from the hours of 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. anyway. So it really doesn't affect any differently what George Beale offers at his Johnny Quick. So we like that same right. We understand there's an oversaturation. When I spoke to Susan as well, she indicated that all these ABC licenses had been deactivated, so then that brought it down to 5 licenses available or existing. We thought, okay, we'll go back to 6, we'll be okay. And she expressed to me that this is a very low crime area. So she could justify if we receive a PCN letter from Clovis PD, they could support it as well. and that's where we left that. And then we met with Clovis Police Department a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and we expressed this in a summary to them, and they said they would review it. It was January 9th when I believe we received a letter saying that they could not support our request. We understand that, we respect that, respectfully, but we do wish we could have that type 20 at this point. In regards to the 24-hour operation, we meet all six criteria for conditional use permit compatibility. This is a commercial area, centralized commercial area. There's a huge benefit to the university, huge benefit to the hospital for those laborers, staff workers, hospital workers. If I might digress into a story, when I was 16 years old, growing up in Mendota, I was a farm laborer. And during the peak of the summer, my dad and I would travel to Bakersfield, California, actually to the south in an area called Pumpkin Center, and we were cantaloupe sorters. And at 16 years old, I was able to sort cantaloupes all day. During the peak of the harvest, we were in the middle of nowhere, 10 miles south of Bakersfield. We worked from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. the next morning sorting cantaloupes. My only reprieve is we had a 3-hour window to get back to Bakersfield, and we couldn't afford a motel, my dad and I, so we'd sleep in our van. But we would stop at this convenience store that was a 24-hour convenience store at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, so I could get something to drink and some nacho Doritos and something else so I can go to sleep and get ready for the work in the next 3 hours. We did this for 4 weeks, and that convenience store was my saving grace. So now I understand why we would need a 24-hour use, not only for the hospital workers, but for the laborers, people that work at night, people that clean hospitals, people that clean offices. It's a much needed necessary. It's also ideal location. It's right off the 168. People going to Prather, Bass Lake, Shaver, in both directions at whatever time it might be. They might need gas. They might need food. Great opportunity. It's only a 3.5-hour window from when normally convenience stores are allowed to be open. By the time you shut down the convenience store at 2 o'clock, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to get things cleaned up and locked up. Well, 2.5 hours later, you're bringing new staff in to open up at 5 o'clock, 5:30 to get ready for the 6 o'clock crowd. We thought it obvious the 24-hour use would be ideal at this location.
Thanks, Orlando. I have a question for you. Anybody else have a question for Orlando? So, Orlando, if I heard you right, you would prefer that the conditions allowing alcohol sales remain, but would you and your partners still want to move forward with the use without the alcohol sales? We would. We reach out to our clientele, and they're still, one of them is on board, the other two have dropped, but one of our remaining potential clients said they would still like to move forward with the understanding or the hope that there will be an additional redistricting, or as the populations grow, there'll be another opportunity to present an ABC license. Okay. And I do have a question. It's probably for staff, but it's related to this. I think my question is, there's interest in commercial use, temperance, and let's call it knees, maybe, down a little farther. So I guess from a staff perspective, and maybe, Orlando, you probably can sit down if nobody has any questions, but I kind of get, whatever. Anyway, my question is, over time, the R&T Park was really sort of a no commercial zone, right? That was our promise, or limited commercial. Now we've got the corner where the Johnny Quick and Riley's and whatnot, McDonald's operates. Now we have this corner. Now we're going to have interest in the Temperance and Knees corner. So from a larger R&T Park plan, how is this going to cumulatively add up as we look at the development of that park over time? So why don't we hold that thought? Anybody have any more questions for Orlando? So you can sit down.
Okay, thank you.
You're not on that side. You got to go sit down on that side. Hold on just a second, George. Let me hear the answer to this, and then we'll ask for more public comment.
Right, so the project site is within the boundaries of the Sunrise Pavilion Commercial Center. So this is part of the carve-out that the council approved. Do you remember when that was done, Marissa? She was like in the third grade, so no, she doesn't remember. Don't even ask her when it was. Probably. I was here, but she was in the third grade. The thing we're most ashamed of is that Londo probably knows the answer to that. But sit down. You can't talk. But you keep that to yourself, Londo. A handful of years ago, the council established the carve-out for this area as the commercial sector, the kind of the retail customer service sector for the RT vicinity. And so we're not expanding that area through this action. This was one of the original parcels that was set aside for that use. And we continue to get interest on all of the parcels that were within that original, commercial carve-out.
Temperance and Knees coming along, I mean, at some point, or other corners, or other requests for commercial development, can you see in the R&T park?
There's interest at Temperance and Knees, that was established, through a rezoning process for, more or less an office designation. We don't have, at this point, a defined proposal for a commercial, a retail project, but you're right, we have heard there's some interest there. That'll be a decision point that will, I'm sure, come up at some point in the near future.
It's probably a different census tract. I'm not sure where the line is. It's the same census tract. So, I mean, I think just sort of if we can look ahead a bit, that's what's going to happen. So Temperance and Needs, and then I think as they develop some of the CHSU larger vision for a kind of a campus master plan throughout the R&T park, I think they see additional uses for dining and drinking and others. So this is a problem. We can solve this problem, but we're going to run into it again shortly. So it's just a kind of a caution on that, I think, as we look at this. All right, we're back in public comment. I should stop talking.
I have a question for staff, though. The census tract 5512 goes to Knees?
Yes, it does.
Okay, then there is a seventh one. There's Borelli's at Fowler and Knees. That's
yes.
Type 21. Is that listed with
yes,
this?
Yes, that is listed as a shop and go.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
Potatoes, potatoes.
We're back in public comment. Mr. Beal, you've been trying to stand up 3 times. Please.
Is it on?
It is.
Mayor, members of the council, I'm George Beal. My address is 1175 Shaw Avenue, Clovis. As you know, I appealed the ABC license for these guys here, and I also appealed the hours of operation. And the reason I appealed it is because these guys weren't the first to try to do this. There was Fast Trip is the outfit that had it in escrow before these guys came along. And I went to ABC to see what's going on with the licenses. And they go, well, they pull the permits and things like that, but they never brought them back. And they had probably had a year. And then all of a sudden, maybe even longer, I don't even know if they brought it to the city or not, but all of a sudden, they were gone. And I said, well, I think there's too many licenses. And they go, well, it doesn't really make any difference because it's a low crime area, and I think they'll probably get it if they apply for it. That was ABC's story to me. Well, I thought Clovis had turned down the Clovis and Herndon ARCO. I thought they probably would get it. I didn't realize there were only 2 licenses allowed in that area, and they already had 4. So I go, well, I don't think Clovis is going to change their mode of operation now. But when these guys came along and they applied for an alcoholic beverage license, I couldn't figure out why they applied for a 20 and a 21. If you apply for a 21, you don't need a 20. Kind of, why would you do that? When I got my approval at Clovis and Gettysburg, I applied for a 21, but I didn't have a 21, so I took a 20. But I already was approved for a 21, so I upgraded to a 21 and surrendered my 20. Didn't have to, but I surrendered it to keep the count accurate in that census tract. So I think that once a census tract gets over-concentrated, at least by 30, 40%, I think putting another store across the street that sells alcoholic beverages is not really helping the necessity and convenience because it already exists. So that was my reason for doing this. If it was a mile away, half a mile away, I may come down and argue, but my case would probably be limited. So that was why I was coming for that. Now, the 24-hour deal, I understand what Fernando said, Fernando said, but, I tried to increase the hours in 2010. We opened there in 2008. Hours were from 5 to midnight. So I said, I'd like to stay open on Friday and Saturday till 2 o'clock. Planning Commission turned me down. And I said, why'd you turn me down? Because we said if we gave you till 2 o'clock before, it would bring crime. And we were right because there is no crime out there. So I said, okay. I appealed it to the council, and the council approved it, and Harry Armstrong was the only council member that voted against me. I looked it up, so I go, I still got it. So, the thing is, we don't stay open until 2 o'clock. We beat the bar crowd. We close at 1 o'clock. And it's just, the dollars and cents really don't even make any sense from 12 to 1 o'clock. But the thing that happens, we used to run all 24-hour stores, and we left it up to the franchisee. Right now, I don't have any franchisees that run 24-hour stores. They can open at 6, they can close at 11 o'clock. I get a lot of stuff from convenience store news and things like that. And I think your package includes the Quick Trip flyer. The Quick Trip says, Quick Trip ends 24 operations in selected Kansas stores. There's a lot of convenience stores out there that have started reducing their hours. 20 years ago, there were a lot of people out after midnight. I don't know what the hell has happened, but they're just not out there anymore. I don't know what they were doing out there in the first place, but yeah, I think the people have gotten older. What? they're going to bed at 8 o'clock. So, but I think the 24-hour thing is overblown. Some locations may need it. That area out there, once they pass that Temperance and get into Harlem Ranch, or we do get people that head up to Shaver, Prather, that type of area, but Prather has a couple of 24-hour stores. And they may need it because people leave up there, come down, and but I think the 24-hour deal is kind of passé. And I don't want to, people will get off because they know you're 24 hours, but they may not be the people who want to stop in that area.
So your store, George, is not 24 hours, closes at 1 and opens at 6?
It opens, actually, in the summertime, they open about 4:30 because people start earlier, and they want you open by 5. They don't want to have to wait around for 15 minutes, and a lot of construction people and that type of thing. I'd recommend they open at 4:30 or 4 o'clock, and they'll catch a lot of that particular traffic.
All right.
But, like I say, if they can do it, and they can probably, take their hourly readings, and we just don't do it. And we do it for safety, we do it for employees, and there's no money in it. Now, I have one other question that has come up. And when I go home, I pass the Leonard and Shaw Arco. They don't have a block wall 3 feet high that I thought was kind of standard, or a berm, standard in Clovis, shield the traffic on Shaw Avenue or whatever street from the parking lot traffic, car lights. Now, I see it because I come up on Leonard a lot of times. That's kind of blinds you because, they have 5 gas islands and they all shine out when they're busy, and they're busy. The Arcos give their gas away, so they're a little more busy than we are. We value our gas. Good to know. But I want to make sure that with these guys, that they're shining on the Temperance, and when they come around to go through the drive-through, and they have a drive-through, and they have two-way traffic there on Owens Parkway there, I think they need to shield the cars that are coming in on the roundabout.
Okay.
That's my spiel.
We appreciate your spiel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Anyone else in the chambers to speak to this item? Anyone online? No. All right, we'll bring it back to the council for comment, motion, questions.
more of a comment.
Comment?
When I ran for office the first time in 2017, I was walking precincts out in Loma Vista, and I realized that my truck was on empty, and my choice was to drive to Academy and Shaw to get gas in Sanger, or drive to Fowler and Ashland to get gas, and I was sweating it out. I was worried that I was going to run out of gas before I got there. And now we have a use there. Hopefully we'll have some more. As this census tract becomes more and more developed, as student housing comes in, hopefully soon at California Health Sciences University, as we get additional, as Owens Mountain Parkway punches through, that we're forced to do that stupid circle or roundabout. Hopefully, we'll be able to revisit this. I remember when we were talking about the ARCO at Herndon and Clovis. It's apples and oranges, because there are four liquor licenses on that corner. You have Bevmo, Walmart, the Chevron, and there's a small liquor store there. So it's totally different than this location. And I think that when the census tract situation is revisited, I would be open to at least a type 20 at some point in the future, but I would go along with staff's recommendation for now.
Thanks, Drew. Other comments? Matt?
Yeah, just, if I heard you right, you were talking about the entire center has the capability to go to 24 hours now?
Yes, they have the ability to request it through a CUP that would have to get approved by the Planning Commission.
Okay. But if we approve this as a 24 operation, it'd be pretty hard to say no going forward to any of the other businesses, whether it's McDonald's, Starbucks, anything else in that area. But I'm just throwing that out there. So, is there any safety concerns from PD for the business being open for 24 hours, or any of those businesses being open 24 hours?
That area is the third highest for calls for service as a result of probably the hospital, which some,
Do you mind coming up to the microphone so we can capture this wisdom for history? No worries.
The zone for that location is the third highest for calls for service in that area, not necessarily just those businesses causing the issues, but also the hospital bleeds into that area. I don't think, just my opinion, there's no public necessity for additional alcohol, and then it's just more like a neon sign to bugs, if you will. People come in, and if it's a 24-hour location for alcohol, or even a 24-hour business. So give someone a place, gives other people from out of town a place to go and maybe cause problems. That's just where we stand with that. Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks, Matt. Anyone else?
Then my question becomes, is staff's recommendation that the modifications only pertains to the alcohol, or does staff's recommendation also pertain to the 24-hour use on 005?
That is correct. We are recommending to change conditions 1 and 2, specifically to prohibit the sale of alcohol, but to uphold the Planning Commission's decision to allow the 24-hour use.
Anyone else?
I was going to make a motion to deny the appeal with the amendments to the alcohol use. Is that pretty?
And Mayor, members of council,
Wait, too many negatives in that sentence.
Just that clarity, I
Okay.
think if you read the resolution on page 31, that will get you where you
Just do that one? Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to deny the appeal and approving CUP 2022-005 to allow a 24-hour convenience store and the sale of liquor and alcoholic beverages for off-site consumption in a QSR drive-through use within the Sunrise Pavilion Planned Commercial Center, and finding the project is exempt from SEQA pursuant to a Class 32 categorical exemption.
And just so there's no confusion, conditions in that resolution has the changes to conditions 1 and 2 prohibiting alcohol sales, so just so there's no confusion.
Wait. Conditions 1 and 2 remove the ability to have alcohol sales.
When you read the title, it said alcohol sales, but conditions have been modified, 1 and 2, as part of that resolution. The resolution you approved of conditions as recommended by staff.
Are you clear on that? That is the motion. To not allow alcoholic beverages, but to allow the 24-hour use.
Yes.
Okay. There is that motion. Is there a second to that motion? There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? I might just add, I will reiterate my worry for the larger R&T park. Because if we do this, we're going to do it again and again and again, and I think there's always going to be a reason why we have an exception. So I think we just have to be really careful as we move out around the uses in here. So with that, that is my own discussion item. If there is any others, all in favor of the motion as read by Vaughn, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, I will be a no. So the motion carries with 1 no. All right, clear as mud. Okay. And George, we did receive your letter, so we'll have that as part of the record.
Let me ask you, what happened on the wall?
So I think the wall's not on our agenda tonight, so I don't know about that. Maybe Marissa or Dave, can you connect with George on the retaining wall or whatever the wall is there, between the properties? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, you're welcome. Thanks. Okay. Under administrative items, number 7 is considering an update and a request for direction regarding a potential amendment to parking standards for hotels and related uses. And Dave is looks like the lead on this with Sean.
Thank you again. As you noted, this item is an update and request for direction regarding hotel parking. I want to convey my appreciation for Sean being here, and really since the beginning of the discussion, Sean came forward without really even my office asking, and he volunteered to assist with the discussion, with the outreach to the hotel industry, which has really been essential in this process.
And just to note, we have 2 handouts relating to this item, right?
Yes.
Hotel parking and then this spreadsheet? Yeah.
Correct. The colored spreadsheet or table is from staff. The other item is, I believe, from an interested party here to speak on the item. So going back to your October meeting, the council reviewed the city's existing parking standard for hotels and discussed the possibility of maybe adjusting that standard. Right now, and for the last number of years, the city's parking standard is 1.2 parking stalls per hotel room. Any requirements for restaurants or other ancillary uses are calculated separately and on top of the 1.2 stalls per room. It's not terribly uncommon to see other cities having a parking standard of 1 stall per room. We've looked at some of those standards. It is clear that that's fairly common, but certainly you could find a range of other standards that do exist. In Clovis, most hotels require the approval of a conditional use permit. We just talked about conditional use permits in the last item. And through that process, we can develop, and the Planning Commission can approve a custom or customized parking standard for a hotel based on the characteristics of that hotel and the surrounding site. So our current process does allow us to look at the unique characteristics of a project and develop a parking standard for it. So back in October, after the initial discussion, the council expressed a consensus for staff to go and look at actual parking demand to the extent that we could and bring back some information on the empirical data, if you will, regarding parking demand. So in response to that, Sean and I worked to complete a 13-day survey of parking usage at 10 existing hotels within our city. The intent there was to try to capture at least a couple of weekends during that period. The hope was that we would be able to add to that information occupancy data for each hotel during each night of the survey, and the combined information on actual cars and occupancy would allow us to present to your body a count of stalls per occupied room, and that's really the information that we thought would be valuable. So we went and we counted during late evening or early morning hours the number of stalls that were occupied at each hotel site, and then we went to get the occupancy information from hotels. Our initial investigation was with the Visitors Bureau. They were not able to give us detailed information at all. Sean then went to a process of making phone calls and visiting hotels one-on-one, site-by-site, and then following up with additional visits and phone calls and emails. And to date, we have received occupancy data from 6 of the 10 hotels included in the survey. So about 60% response rate so far. Again, that's with several efforts and multiple points of outreach to try to get the data. The most recent update to that data is what's shown on the blue table that was handed out. I would say there are probably 2 general conclusions that we can reach from that data. First, based on the survey that we completed during the time that we performed it, most of the time, most of the hotels would have adequate parking if we had a standard of 1 stall per room. The second point is that at least 2 of the hotels, 2 of the 6, experienced peak nights where the actual demand exceeded 1.2 stalls per room. So we kind of have a divergence of the information here. If we look at average hotel nights or even weekend hotel nights, on average, 1 stall would be fine per room. But clearly there are a couple of hotels where the stalls per occupied room were at or above our standard, our current standard. The data that we have is not nearly as complete as we'd like it to. Even if we had all 10 hotels providing occupancy data, we still would have just a limited number of days. We didn't happen to be able to do this during a time where we captured a rodeo weekend or a CIF track meet, when we think that probably we're going to get the truest peaks of what hotel occupancy and vehicle usage would be. And without further data, as your city planner, I'm a little bit uncomfortable in recommending that we reduce the standard universally. I think we still have the ability to look at parking on an individual basis through the CUP process. And I kind of think that's the sweet spot based on the data that we have today. But alternatively, if the council provides direction to do so, we certainly do have the ability to go back and you have the ability to initiate a code amendment process, and through that we could look at trying to codify some of these operational characteristics and maybe site characteristics of hotels that might lend themselves towards a reduced parking ratio. So as an example, hotels that don't have conference rooms that are available to rent out probably are going to have lower peak factors. Also, there might be some features where proximity to residential neighborhoods come into play. If the outlet for excess parking is in a residential neighborhood, I think that's when conflicts are most likely to occur. If the overflow goes into commercial streets or into a reciprocal parking area, then I think the room for conflict is much less. So we might be able to quantify and codify some of those things to come up with maybe a tiered parking standard to give you a brief explanation of how that might look. This is for me, kind of an unusual circumstance where I think that there's enough information here to really make a case for leaving the standard as it is, or to pursue a reduction. I don't like that as staff. I like there to be a little brighter line. Sean and I have talked about this at length. We'd love for there to be an obvious ability to reduce the parking standard. We like the idea of more hotels, more hotel rooms. I particularly am a little cautious about what that means to adjacent uses when hotel lots fill up. I think many of us during our personal lives have stayed in hotels, and you hate to be that hotel guest that comes in late and doesn't have a place to park, and you get told, well, you can park down the street, but you're at your own risk. Or Sean described a scenario where the hotel managers told them to park in a handicap stall. I've been told to park in an employee-only parking stall over the last couple of months. That happened to me. We're just cautious about reducing our standard universally and what the secondary effects of that might look like. It's really a question of risk either way, and we're prepared to take the council's direction if you have it this evening, or to come back with more data as soon as we can get it. That's your preference.
Dave, can you just reflect on how we got here? Was it hotel operators asking for a change, or are you just looking for flexibility, or I can't quite remember what drove the question?
I think there was some initial interest from the hotel industry or prospective hotel developers, and then it specifically, I think, came to us through Councilmember Monatua, and that's how we agendized.
Should have known. All right. Well, see, I can't remember. That's a good thing. You can remember what you asked about. All right. That helped. So I'm going to hear what Vong has to say because he brought this up. Thanks, Dave. Any questions for staff? Drew?
Are any of these, the 6 hotels that responded, are any of them classified as extended stay places? Do we have extended stay? The only place I can really recall is like Rodeo Lodge, where you have a lot of construction crews and people like that staying. Is any other place extended stay, categorized?
We excuse me, in the city of Clovis, we really don't have an extended stay. There are some hotels that, kind of are similar to that, like the Homewood Suites, Hampton Inn, the ones over on Gettysburg.
That one on Clovis is by Service to Mall, home to, I forgot what it's called, the Hilton product, home to something.
Thank you.
That one.
I'm sorry, but to answer your question, we really don't have any. I think what you are describing, I'm assuming what you're describing is more of a we're going to live here for a month. You have some rooms, where people may be working on a project and stay regularly. They may leave and then come back because they're working in Clovis or working in the area. But we don't have what you're describing here in the city of Clovis that I know of.
The reason I'm asking is because a lot of times those type of vehicles are going to take up more than one space. Like during fire season when we have a whole parking lot full of fire vehicles. Did we have issues with the number of spaces that were occupied by fire vehicles and taking, from other folks? Was there ever I never heard anything, and I always assumed that most of the spaces were, most of the rooms are probably firemen anyway.
So oversized vehicles in general, as we were counting these cars in the parking lots every single night, we did find that from time to time there would be there was an auto, like a car carrier, 18-wheeler. One night there was 2 of them parked out behind one particular property. Of course, each one of them is taking up 8-10 spaces each. So we counted those as those 8 or 10 spaces. We took them and counted as they were occupied, like as if they were occupied by a single vehicle. From time to time, there were some trailers that were parked, like you described. And each time we counted those as, we counted the number of spaces that they actually took up as it would be taken by a regular vehicle. So that does happen. Well, we don't know how many, people arrive in these vehicles. So a fire truck, for instance, do they have a whole crew of guys that are showing up? They have one. We really don't know the answer to that.
Oh, we don't want to talk about fire trucks, because then the fire chief has to talk about who's in a fire truck. Let me guess. Firefighters are in a fire truck.
That they are. You have to remember when we bring them in is that they come as a strike team, so that is 5 like engines with 4 personnel on it, so it's 20 people, and then they put 2 in a room. And then if we do have males and females in odd numbers, we don't cohabitate together, so sometimes it winds up being 11 or 12 rooms in order to make it work. So really you've got 5 of the bigger fire engines, but you're using, 11 rooms. So if you use the 1.2, we're really still within that parking allocation, if that helps. And normally the other people that are there have left their cars or whatever because they're no longer allowed in their homes, so they're just happy to have a place that they could shower, but and that isn't the Red Cross shelter.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah. Diane, you had a light, and then Vaughn.
Yeah, I have just a question. On the 1.2 standard, how has that worked if there's a hotel property that is in the same vicinity as other parking lots for other businesses or that type of thing? How does that kind of sort itself out?
I don't know that we have seen one like that just yet. There has been some recent discussion about a hotel or two that might be located within an area that has a lot of parking in the surrounding area and in a shopping center kind of environment. And what essentially we'd be looking for is there enough parking that is dedicated to the hotel that they can make it work, and then overflow parking could be provided through a reciprocal easement, which we think would be fairly common in that kind of environment. So we haven't seen it done yet, and I think none of the 10 hotels that were included in this analysis are like that. But that would be kind of I don't want to say an obvious case, but I think a good situation where we would approve a reduced parking standard for the hotel with the idea that the excess parking could be available as part of the surrounding area.
Probably the one that might be close to that is the at Peach and Shaw. There's the Marriott, there's the the other one, and then there's the shopping center. Yeah, and then there's, at Gettysburg and Clovis, there's multiple hotels, so I think there are some of those, but, all right, Vaughn, since this was your question.
I wanted to take a look at this more for the future, because this policy has been around, it didn't even get changed or looked at in 2014, so it must have been, 2008, potentially, and so it's been a long time, and we recently passed the TOT tax, which means more rooms, more dollars, and if there was an issue, then I would go, well, it doesn't justify it. But I look at it and I go, this really has not been an issue. So moving forward, why not allow someone who wants to build here to have more rooms, to be able to, welcome more into our town and to be able to generate more tax dollars because of the potential of losing that extra floor or 40, 50 rooms because the parking has been, the requirement has been large. I mean, I know this is not hotels, but I look at the senior homes that we have. I mean, the parking lot is huge, but no one parks in it. And I think, we got to look at those things to see how reasonable it is. And in looking at this, I see that the costs don't outweigh sort of the benefits that will come. And how many areas right now that have potential new hotels coming in as well? So I also see that we can also assess it after the next one, if the next hotel is built, and also go, okay, here it is, here's a new policy, because they're not being built like homes where we see them every day. And I don't think it's as risky as the small streets. And so that way we can kind of, narrow streets. And so I saw it in that sense, that because there isn't anything, blatant that goes, okay, there's complaints from businesses, there's complaints from neighbors parking in their streets because the hotel's right there. And I see that the upside has not been addressed in that, we have an ability to increase the number of rooms and the number of occupancy. That's why I wanted to say that 1-to-1 is sort of like pretty much our neighbors to the west of us as well, and make it where those who come here can see that they can benefit. And I think it will attract more to go, no, I will build there because it's safer, it's cleaner, and have the same amount of space. So.
Thanks, Juan. Anything else for staff? I'll open the public portion. Anyone in the audience wishing to comment on this item? Please.
Good evening, guys. My name is Randy. I don't know if you guys remember me. I spoke last time. So you guys mentioned that there isn't a extended stay product in Clovis, but we actually have one on Helm and Shaw. It's the Marriott Town Place Suites, and we provided a printout of a 30-day analysis that we did on the property, which provides occupancy data alongside how many parking stalls were actually vacant. As you can see, on more than likely 90% of the time, there were plenty of parking stalls available. So we actually have probably more than 10 hotels in our portfolio, and we've never had an issue. There are certain hotels in Fresno, Clovis that have surplus in parking and actually are selling their parking stalls to do like a park and fly. So if the hotel provides shuttle service, hey, you guys pay us $10 a day, you park your car here and we'll drop you off at the airport. So I don't know if that was taken into consideration when you guys did your study, but I think it's going to be a huge benefit for Clovis to encourage development. If obviously this is not passed, it's going to drive us, it's going to drive other developers outside of Clovis just to go develop in Fresno, which we don't want to do.
So you're saying if we lowered the parking standards, that would be more beneficial for
everyone,
the sector?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is just an item tonight to hear the item, so we're not going to do anything tonight in terms of action, but we are just taking comments, so thank you for adding to the discussion.
Yeah, no worries. And so we purchased 7.5 acres on Herndon Avenue, right? If this parking, so we're looking to spend over $60 million to develop that area, and if this, let's say, parking is not approved, then we're basically going to have 2 acres to spare, which we can't even do anything. And based on the previous agenda, we might not even get a liquor license, so we don't even have an option to put a liquor store there. So it's a lose-lose situation. But I think it probably would be beneficial for the city, beneficial for all the developers in Clovis, Fresno area that want to develop in Clovis. And as you can see, based on Town Place Suites in Clovis, if there was a 1-for-1 parking requirement, we would have had an additional 34 rooms, and that's me talking at a very bare bones. It could have been more, it could have been way more, but I'm just talking as far as I can, and that would have generated $24,000 in revenue for the month, and that's only on 34 rooms. So if we triple that, which is 100 rooms, a standard hotel is about 100 rooms, we're looking at nearly $100,000 in TOT tax that the city can benefit from.
Those are good comments. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on this item? Anyone online?
No.
Okay.
Sorry. So you said a decision on this wouldn't be made right now. If it was to be made, what sort of timeline are we looking at? Because we're ready to develop on that Herndon property, and we need to know either way.
Well, the action tonight is just to provide direction to staff, so you'll hear in a minute if the direction of the council is leave it alone, change it, or some other compromise. So you should know that momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else in the chambers to comment, or nobody online? All right, we'll close the public portion. Any further questions for staff or council comment? I have one. Is that a question, or are you going to make a motion? There is no motion.
Discussion.
There's a thing. Discussion. Go ahead.
I think we would be well served to continue the 1.2, but give staff the latitude to make it less or even make it more, depending on the circumstances. I was speaking to the Hellman Shaw location. I think there was a black bear diner that was planned there at one point, for some reason didn't go through. That would, I mean, you'd have a kind of a symbiotic relationship with, I stay at the hotel, I eat at the diner, I park my car, I walk over here. So I think, I would think that it's beneficial for staff to have the flexibility to bring it down to one per in a given situation, but that would be something that staff would have to discuss, you know, and the planning director would have to be okay with that. That was my thoughts.
Is there any other discussion? I was just going to say kind of the same thing Drew said. I think it needs to be project, I think we need a baseline, so if it's 1.2 or 1, whatever that baseline is, but I do think it has to be given the project. And that example is a really good example, because if I'm in the hotel, but I'm walking to the diner, I don't need a parking space at the diner and a parking space at the hotel. So I do think your scenarios of, is it in a residential area? Where does the excess parking go? I think those are all the kind of, it's not a variance in the legal sense of the term variance, but I feel like there needs to be a little bit of criteria on how you might adjust. So your example, you have 7 acres, that might be different than if you had 4 acres. So I think the baseline standard is probably okay, but I do think some mechanism by which you can bring a recommendation to us to say our variances, our standard is this, but for this project, given all these reasons, we think it's that. And I think that would give developers and others some flexibility to use their whole parcel, or in this case, at Shaw and Helm, the kind of cumulative, there's my word again, for the whole kind of those 2 pieces plus the diner or whatever that was. So I would tend to agree with Drew on the way forward. I don't know if you need more data necessarily. You have data collected by one particular hotel. You've got 6 other hotels. But I think maybe spending time on that kind of variance process on how you would decide where you land, that would be my recommendation.
Mayor, I just had one question. It's going to be, and Dave, you can probably clear this up, is going to be that the 1.2 is codified in the development code. How much discretion do you have right now? And if you don't have much, what would it take to give you the discretion that council's talking about?
Anytime there's a conditional use permit required, which is going to be the majority of the cases, I'd have to do some more research to determine if there was a possibility of a hotel not requiring a conditional use permit. But anytime there is a use permit required, the code allows a custom parking standard to be calculated and approved, which would be the case at the site that the applicant described to you, or the interested party described to you.
So I think as long as you had some way you could kind of consistently apply some algorithm to decide how you might flex it, I think is right. I think that's right. Anyone else?
Go ahead. I'm confused at the response. Since it's codified, is there wiggle room in the codification, or is it 1.2 forever and ever, amen, unless, is there an asterisk there, or do we need to change the code?
It's a figurative asterisk, if you will. The codified standard is 1.2, and that's kind of the baseline that we described. Anytime there is a use permit, the code specifically says that the parking standard for that use can be calculated and approved individually through that use permit process.
So there is wiggle room in the code as it exists to say, okay, we're gonna make this 1.1, we're gonna make this 1.3. There's enough flexibility in that you could do that?
Through the CUP process.
Yes, through the CUP process, correct.
Okay. And how many times have we lowered it below 1.2?
Once.
And how long?
Once that I'm aware of during my tenure here, that's for the hotel under construction, near Gettysburg and Clovis.
I believe that the transportation has changed. People are, not driving their cars when they come into town. They're taking buses where all the students are staying, and it's evident in the data. And if there are concerns, I guess I'm assuming there's at least 10 hotels, because there's a Hotel 10, so there must be 1 through 10. Those already have 1.2 to 1, okay, except for one, okay? And so in other words, it's not going to affect these. It's moving forward. What do we do? How do we change? How do we make, what's best for, those who want to build here, the tax dollars, plus make it where, is there an issue? And I see that there's not a glaring issue, and it's time to change that and time to, actually make an ordinance amendment to make it where it's 1.1. Because when it's 1.2, I think human nature is stick to it, unless you can bring me glaring, reasons why, and it's very rare, and it'll be difficult. But if it's 1.1, I think, we can get everything, and still we can say, hey, you're next to this, or hey, you're by resident. We can impose those and say that this is why you need to move up just a little bit here. I think the burden shifting makes it much more productive for everyone. So that's my discussion point. I don't know if Matt and Diane want to say anything before I make a motion.
How did you come up with 1.1?
That's what Fresno has.
Another reason why I would never want to do that.
And not only that, the
some worse reason ever to do something. I'm sorry.
We did that with
just kidding.
Other stuff that
Sorry. A little humor there.
So if there's nothing, if you had a comment, I was going to make a motion.
I want to clarify what you were saying. Are you saying 1.1 stalls per hotel room, or one stall per one room?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually, just for what it's worth, I like the idea of lowering that standard, because I agree with Vong that whatever the standard is, it's a lot harder to shift off of. And so if that does benefit future development, and from the data we do have, again, agreeing with Vong, I don't see the glaring issue, but as long as there is the flexibility for staff to recognize that there could be that situation, I think it would be better serving the community and the potential development to lower the standard, but still have room to bring it up if need be. That would be my position.
So I think we have two. We have lower, so this is a no motion item. This is a direction item, right? So I think what you're hearing is a little bit of 1.2 is fine, and staff, you have permission to adjust, right? Given some algorithm that you could use to decide. Now, if you want a specific number, then I think you have two people saying it's 1, lower it to 1 stall per room. I'm not sure, Matt, where you are on this. So your direction right now is not particularly clear quite yet. Hold on, we'll get you there, don't worry.
Well, I think it's a project-by-project basis. I mean, we get ourselves put in corners when we go back and say, well, now everything's going to be 1 for 1 now, and, the project could be completely different. So I think what we have now is 1.2 with the ability to change it based on the needs of the project through the CUP process. So, I mean, any project could come in and say, based on the what we're seeing here, we only need 1 space per room. So, I mean, that's...
The hazard of 1 is it never would be 1.2. It'd be much easier to go down. It would be really hard to say to a developer, oh, except for you need to give us more. That's the only risk of lowering it. I mean, just rhetorically. So,
So I would just say that, if we went forward with this, it would be something to let our development community know that if they're going to make a proposal, that is an option to make it lower based through the CUP process and go from there. So
So it seems like there's three folks, I think we're all in agreement that it can be less. I think we're all saying it as the property, as the land allows, go forth and make it less and safe and all the rest. I think it's a little bit of two views on lowering it to one or leaving it the same with your discretion. So I don't know, if you go with three, thinking we should leave it the same, but work on an algorithm to lower it or to adjust as part of the CUP, maybe give us a little bit of background on that, then we could think about, then we'd have a little bit more to go on. I think is what I'm hearing. I don't know if anybody disagrees with me.
Very rarely are we going to have two projects being equal. I've gotten calls from people who are complaining about a neighboring business on Herndon Avenue using their residential neighborhood for their employees' parking. And we don't want to have that situation occurring next to a hotel use. So that's where the flexibility that staff has to say, yeah, but you're right next to this, we're going to have to hold you to 1.1 or 1.2 because of the overflow aspect into the neighborhoods. They're not going to be happy. Like the ones at Clovis and Gettysburg. I don't know if they're having problems with on-site parking. I'm assuming they're not. But the overflow parking would go into the industrial park area across the street, which hurts no one. So if, I think at least what I'm saying is the staff has the flexibility to come off the 1.2, but we have a standard, but we need to be flexible about it, and it's by the nature of the use.
And I just wanted to see if this will convince one of you. So when you go one-on-one, the building size changes. But if you go one or two, you can never build again. So I'm just saying, if you get 30 more rooms, 100 more rooms, that potential is always there. But once you put 1.2, it's not like, oh, but you can go to 1.1 now. It doesn't mean, oh, well, now I'm going to build another floor. So in other words, what we do changes the actual building that moves forward. That's what I was looking for here, going, oh, what we've been doing, it's been affecting people already. We're talking about hypotheticals, but it's not hypothetical when the building has an extra floor with 80 more rooms, which generates potentially more TOT dollars to the community. That's a reality where it's not a hypothetical at all. So, public safety guys?
Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say that the developer would be able to come in with, that proposal from the very beginning. So it's not like we're saying, hey, we're sending them back telling them you have to have 1.2 parking spaces right now. If we have the ability to change it in the CUP, the developer should be doing that in the very beginning of the process to come forward and say, hey, I'm going to build I'm not going to say anything higher than 5 stories for a new fire truck, but, having that development be able to come in and say, this is how big we're going to make the property, this is how we're going to, this is what we're going to need for parking spaces, but, I think the ability to do all that is already built into the current code and the CUP process we have. I agree with Lynn that if we go out and say, hey, we're going to reduce our parking spaces, everyone's going to be 1 point per space going forward, there is no ability to go up. Because once you take it away, then you will have a fight on your hands to go higher. So that's my thought with it.
So I think in the interest of time, we will say that we all agree that we want to be proactive, supportive of development, match the project to the parcel, be mindful of surrounding neighborhoods, consider each project. And you have the permission and the authority in a CUP process, working with the developers. If you come in with a project and you think it's 0.9, make a case. Make a case. And I think that's sort of the give and take. And if you all want to spend a little more time kind of clarifying how you might go about deciding, you are all super good at that. So I think we all agree that we can be more flexible and not let the 1.2 scare someone off and you do the math and go, well, I just lost 36 rooms and it might not pencil out or whatever that is. So I think that's the message to the hotel sector. And maybe you want to come back and tell us how you're going to apply that flexibility or how you'll decide. and I think we can move on. But I think you just have a couple of, we all share the same outcome. How we get there is a little bit different, but I think you have enough to do something with. Renee's nodding, so you just can't see over your left shoulder, but I see that nod, so I'm going with that nod. It's a good conversation, and thank you for the public comment as well. Thanks for bringing that forward. Thanks for remembering why you did it. Couldn't remember. All right, I've lost my agenda, but I think the next item up is a 3.5-hour PowerPoint by the fire chief. That's what it says here.
Death by PowerPoint.
Huh?
Death by PowerPoint.
Death by PowerPoint. Well, you know, and John, we have learned that you will be retiring this year. Is that right? Is that a rumor or is that a fact?
That is 100% fact. July will be my retirement date, and then based on there, so first off, Mayor, City Council, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present the next 3 hours on the fire department.
No problem.
For the two new council members, I can talk about the fire service forever, and they obviously know this, so we'll be here. And last but not least, as you mentioned, July will be my retirement date, so I don't even know how much more time I'll get to talk about the fire service, so I have to use all of the.
That was my worry, like if you divide the number of months left by how many PowerPoint
slides. So I only have 82 slides, so we'll get to them as fast as we possibly can. I know Renee's hungry, so I promised by 10:30, so I'll get there.
But Matt offered to buy you a new fire truck. I heard it on the public record. He offered a fire truck.
And just so we are, is no one's going to add another floor. If you've ever traveled out of state, there's a reason why California only has 4 floors. Is it's the fire code, the cost goes up tremendously to add the next floor because they have to go to type 1 construction. So it only allows them to go left or right. So no matter what, we're good. And we have one, and we're greatly appreciative. The city of Clovis will not need another one for a second one in service for. I don't even think my children will be alive. So we'll be plenty fine even at our 850 home.
All right, Chief. Let's get going on this 3-hour PowerPoint.
All right. So first off, is a quick review is our mission, and part of that really is we want to prevent harm, be professional. But really, our biggest thing that my staff hears all the time is we use resources wisely. It's citizens' tax dollars. We're asking people to take money out of their paychecks or their thing, give it to government, and we want to make sure we spend it properly. And they always hear me say, what's our return on investment? And they'll probably be glad when I retire so they don't have to hear that as much, but that's really what we focus on is what's our return on our investment back to our citizens we protect, and how is that going to improve our service for delivery. So a little history on the fire department. In 1912, the first fire ordinance was passed, and it enacted the purchase of the first firefighting equipment. In 1917, the formal fire department was formed with volunteer firefighters, and then in 1966, we had our first paid or career fire chief and 5 firefighters. So we're really on that. We're going to come up to 60 years here in 26. So we're plugging right along there of where we are a career fire department. Today, I have 73 total personnel, 67 sworn, and 6 non-safety personnel in fire prevention and administration. So where are we is we're pretty much exactly the same now with the opening of Station 6. Today, we're 1 sworn position less than where we were all the way back in roughly 2006, 2007. So the population's gone from about 90,000, 89,000 or so to almost 125, and we're basically the same fire department staff as we have been for basically the past, almost 17 years or so. So population's growing, city growth, but we've managed to still try to provide the best service possible. Where we are as the fire chief is at the top of the organization. We have our emergency operations, which is most of our staff. It's where majority of our sworn staff is, and that's the boots on the ground that service the community when they dial 911. We have our community risk reduction, which is the new language, but let's call it the old language where everybody knows it's fire prevention. That's our building inspection, new development, where we go out and do the life safety state mandated inspections annually. And then we have administration, which is our budget, personnel, and things along those lines. We're a fully accredited department. We are one of the few and only accredited department in the Central Valley. Bakersfield just became, or is in the process of becoming accredited, so they look like to be the next one. And it's something we're very proud of. We've been accredited for well over 20 years. We're just entering our 5th cycle now to take it almost to 25 years. And we have some guiding documents that really guide where we do things. That's our community risk assessment and standard of cover, our strategic plan, which is where we want to hear from the external stakeholders, which are business owners, citizens, and our internal stakeholders. And then we do our annual report and our emergency operation plan. So those are our 4 main documents that we put together. Later this year, probably in March or April, you'll see our annual report for 22. And these documents basically make us or work towards our goal of continuous improvement. Here's our 6 wonderful fire stations. The bottom right one there is the brand new Station 6, which we opened in August. And the middle one at the top is Station 2, which we're hoping to come back to you in February with the bid award to scrape and rebuild that station. Currently, we've had a big engineer report from a private engineer consulting firm, and the entire roof's caving in, and it no longer really serves our needs. The location is fantastic, but it unfortunately needs to be rebuilt. And our fire stations are strategically located throughout the city. So assume, take a 3-mile circle, and that's about what it serves. So just take a 3-mile circle and start putting them across the city, and that's how it works. Now, road network and stuff makes it so it's not quite a circle, but it's basically how we operate. So we try to distribute our resources. There are 3 people at each station each day. So that's 6 stations. That's 18 people each day and 1 battalion chief. So the first thing we always look at, we look at the fire department, is the importance of time. We are in an industry that time is very important. So the first one at the top is really just the time that when the call is received or when the actual event happens, and we'll talk a bit more about this, when the event happens until we get there to start CPR or start basic life support, and then when the ambulance gets there to start advanced life support, and your ability to survive a cardiac event, a stroke, or a major traumatic injury is really, as you see in that thing, the longer the time goes, your chances of survival diminish rapidly. The same thing kind of happens on the opposite end of it, which is the significance of fire growth. So every minute, fire doubles in size. So every minute from the time the call is recognized till the time we get there to start putting water on it, the fire is growing. So once it grows beyond flashover, it's left the room, the initial room on contents, and that's really what our goal is, to arrive on scene and confine the fire to the room of origin. We have a goal of trying to do that to 80% of our calls. And normally we do a very good job of that. The ones that exceed the room of contents are ones that are normally not recognized early. So it's an attic fire in the middle of the night. It's PD or passerby who reports that the fire has grown significantly before it's been identified and started 911. So time is really our enemy, and that's what we're always fighting. That's why we put stations strategically located throughout the community in order to reduce our response times. So let's talk a little bit about response times. So first, an event has to be recognized. Then someone has to call 911. And then here we do what we call pro QA through our EMS communications. They ask questions. They give ability to the layperson to do CPR if necessary over the phone, or how to control bleeding, or how to evacuate due to a fire. So they give what's called pro QA, so it's pro questions and answers. As they answer the questions, it determines the right size response. How many units are we sending? Are we sending them with licensed sirens? How are we going to respond to that call? And that takes about 1 minute and 30 seconds to process all that. Is the person on the phone? It used to be a lot faster when we had hard lines. You pick up the hard line, it'd tell you you're at Clovis High School at the southwest corner of the pay phone by the gym. It doesn't do that as well anymore, so we have to ask quite a few more questions on a cell phone. But the good news is instead of your house on fire, you'd leave your house, you'd be banging on a neighbor's door to call 911. Most people now have the ability to call right away when they identify an emergency, so we save time on that. Then it takes a minute for us to get out to the fire engine for a call, and then we have a 4-minute travel time. And that's how we get to our benchmark time response standard, which is 6 minutes and 30 seconds for an EMS call. So an hour, minute and a half to call process, a minute to get on the rig and drive off, and then a 4-minute travel time. Now, when we compare this to what we do for a fire call, the only difference is everything else still stays the same, except we have to put on all the fire gear, and we need to make sure that, and we extended this from 1 minute to 1 minute and 30, because we used to get dressed in the rig on the way to the call, but unfortunately, we're not wearing our seatbelts. We've had fire engines getting wrecks, and in turn, people ejected out of the fire engine. And normally, unfortunately, when you see fire engines getting a significant wreck, they're very top-heavy, and they roll over on the side. So we make sure they get dressed in a larger fashion before they get there, so the turnout time's 1:30 compared to 1 minute. So for anything we have to put specialized gear on, the total response time benchmark is 7 minutes. So that's the difference between 6:30 and the 7 is the ability for us to put on our turnout gear and then get on the rig and buckle our seatbelts. And technology where we are, it's kind of like your car. If the seatbelts aren't buckled in right, the alarms go off and they really won't even let you drive down the road. And we don't want to do like some fire departments did where they just cut the seatbelt off, put the little piece in, and silence the alarm. We actually want to make sure they work like the way they were designed. So we did have a lot of safety features put into modern fire apparatus today. So this one's a little busy for the screen, but part of what I wanted to bring from this is one of the things we do is a critical task analysis. So kind of that, make sure we're using our resources wisely and where we are, is we look at the different types of EMS calls and how many people are required to it. So part of that QA process, that question and answering by the EMS dispatcher for an EMS call is do I even need to send a 3-person fire engine to that call? Is it and a toe pain, ankle pain, something like that that's low acuity that can be handled with the private ambulance provider, code 2, might take them by their standard 20 minutes to get there, but it's not an emergency. They're probably going to assess and refer to try to keep them out of the ER in the first place. We don't go to that call. So that's the critical tasking. That's what we look at. And we've eliminated more and more of those calls compared to, if you take a look where we were at 23, if we went to all those calls today, Station 2 would run about 6,000 to 6,500 calls a year. They run about 34. They're a pretty busy station as it is. We would have to spend the money to put 2 companies in there, and obviously we don't have the money to spend to put another $1.5 million into another company annually into Station 2. So how we do that is we do critical task and risk analysis. Is there a big risk by not doing that or sending that fire engine? And in turn, it's worked out really, really well for us. So we've reduced that call volume by only sending the ambulance to those very low acuity calls, but that can't happen without us doing question and answering on the pro QA side of it. Then we look at high acuity calls, chest pain, strokes, motor vehicle accidents, trauma calls, shootings, stabbings, cardiac arrest, and how many people are needed. And that's where we find out that 5 is the number that's needed to be able to do that, especially CPR, because they get tired, so we have to rotate personnel, we have to help set up IV drips, we need to take vitals, all those different things that need to happen. 5 is the sweet number for that. And then we have a very high risk, which was like an MVA on the freeway with multiple patients or a hazardous material incident with more patients. So each one of them has a different matrix for the amount of resources going to them and and what needs to be accomplished. So this is what we call a critical task analysis. And we do the same thing for fire. So on a fire call, we look at these main functions that we have to have. We have to have people on the fire attack, and part of this is governed with OSHA. So we have to have 2 people on fire attack. We have to have 2 people on the back out line. We have to have 2 people on ventilation minimum. It's outlined in Cal OSHA rules. So we already have some of these things that are there that we automatically have to have so many people to, and in turn that then gives us where we send 16 people to a single-family residence to accomplish all those tasks. And that's based on what's the current. And then if it's a commercial, we send 19. We add another engine based on the size of the structure. If it's multi-story, greater than 2 stories, so and an apartment that has multiple residents within it, normally a common attic, which has high fire loss. Based on our community risk analysis, we then send additional resources. And those are all, we've done a really good modernized job with that with dispatch. Those are all address-based, so when we do our fire prevention for a commercial, it gets a rating. Chad actually has done a great job with that and a rating process. So it looks at what's the fire alarm system, sprinkler systems, building construction, occupancy type, and then in turn it determines does it require 16 or 19 people on the emergency response, and then it's put into the dispatch center by address. So depending on what the address is, based on the fact we know these are 2-story or 3-story apartments, this is where it is, this is how it's built, and then it knows what to send to it. And then a single-family residence automatically just gets 16 people to it.
Chief, a question. How do you, in your, the last slide and this slide, how do you account for the location, right? Because having a high acuity event in a single-family home when there's no one there but the one person is one thing. Having a high acuity event in a Clovis High football stadium when there's 6,000 people is something different. How do you account for location versus acuity or?
That's true. When we do the For commercial, where we do all of the annual fire inspections, we basically look at what the occupancy type is.
So if you got a
what the
call
occupancy
from
flow.
Clovis High Football Stadium and there was some catastrophe, you would send units
More room.
accordingly because you know that was the address. That's your comment on the address.
Well, that's the common part for the address, and then it's also through Pro QA, so they'll ask for, like, if it's a hazardous materials releases, how many people are, inhaled it, or how many people are reporting that they don't feel well, and then we get an upgraded assignment.
All right, thanks.
It works very efficiently, and we couldn't do that without our EMS partners and EMS communications. So then we look at our response times. We started the fire, kind of the speedometer, and actually Chief Despain and I did it, and it's now been ripped off by many vendors and stuff, so we actually take pride in the fact that people stole our work products, so we feel like we did a good job. But no royalties whatsoever. But, and we've kind of massaged how it looks and where we are and colors of where we are. But if you look back where we were probably, well, when I became chief, a lot of that was green. And unfortunately, we slipped to a little bit of yellow and orange. We believe we will see an uptick on the first arriving for EMS, now that Station 6 is open. When we bring back our 22 data, we're probably not going to see enough of it because we only got the last, 5 months of it. We need a full year's data to see some improvement. So we think some of those, the other aspect, and we'll show it to you on a map, till Owens Parkway goes through to get us to Harlan Ranch, we're always going to have an extended response time out there. So some of what you see is the response times aren't the greatest and they've diminished, but it's really because we've done a good job with growth and we're just waiting for pieces to fill in to make the road network complete. So till that comes in, we kind of lose ground and then it kind of gets made back up, and then we lose ground and then it kind of gets made back up. And part of where we're seeing that is we're going to see a much better improvement in the southeast, but there's no way anything above Shepherd. So as we grow above Shepherd, we will have extended response times until there's enough homes up there to justify a tax base to put a fire station up there. So it's just, as growth goes, first we need the rooftops before we can afford to put a fire station in there. So we just kind of see that diminishing factor until it gets built out. And you can kind of see this on this map. Purple's really not good. Green and yellow are decent, but if you see the top end there by Harlan Ranch, purple's bad. But we should see a big fill-in over there in the southeast that should change colors to a green and yellow, which will help our response times. And then a lot of it just comes to how we come back, gates, how we do road network. We really like the center core. If you see the center core there, it is our best response times. The planners have heard this from me 100 times at least. We really like the grid system. Now, PD doesn't like the grid system. They like the turns and stuff because of law enforcement and because of speeding and where they are. So it's a trade-off. But if you look at our best corridor of where we are, it's that center core of the city from Temperance over to Sunnyside, and it's in a big grid system. The outer grid and then how we make the road network inside with turns to slow it for residential traffic, to us, works the best. The problem that we have with that is parcels the developers buy are never that perfect for us to be able to go do that, so we always have to see how it works. And we've kind of rectified the gate by putting Opticom and requiring Opticoms on gates, and then we got rid of the word emergency access point and just made it regular traffic so we can get in those, and that way we know they work. So that's where our time performance is. We expect, like I said, 22 data is not going to show a tremendous improvement because we only have Station 6, but when you see our 23 data, we anticipate a big improvement in there. Here's our call types. We've been pretty consistent by keep trying to remove calls that are low priorities, low acuity, and really trying to right-size our response to the type of emergency. So we've managed to stay pretty firm right in there at that 10,000 range without but our overall call volume of EMS has really expanded each year. We just keep decreasing, so we have our units available to respond to those high acuity calls. And that's really what our goal is we want to make sure we're available, able to respond to those high acuity calls. We don't want to get, because once we get tied up on a very low acuity call, like, foot pain or something like that, we can't leave that patient. So we're committed there, even if the structure fire happens, even if there's another high acuity call around the corner, we can't leave that patient until we turn it over to a higher level of care. So, and right now the ambulance companies are struggling. No fault to American Ambulance. It's just what we call APOD or ambulance time for transfer. The hospitals are so impacted, they can't get the patients out of the ER to rooms upstairs, and it's just a domino effect. So when they can't get them to upstairs in the room, the ER backs up. Well, then when the ER backs up, the ambulance has no place to drop their patient off to a bed in the ER. So in turn, there are 5 to 10 ambulance deeps in the ER bay waiting to be dropped off, and then that's less resources out of the street for them to come. So it's just been since COVID and even a little bit before then, that's just been an ongoing battle for us, and why we're trying to make sure that we go just to those types of calls. But 5 times our city, Fresno runs about 55,000 calls. So we're, still in alignment to where we are based on our population. This is where we are with 6, just to give you a little history, just so you can see it, what we plan and how we work for when Station 7 to the north is out there. We look at basically somewhere around 325, 400 calls for service starts our land purchase, starts design, and then we move up from there. And at the end of the day, we use, a number of, let's say, 2.7 for 8,000 homes, and then that's when we start to look at full build-out, and there's enough of a response out there. So we'll take that total response time that's running out there at 11:14. We anticipate to see that drop down to 7 minutes now. So we'll see a drop now that that station's built and staffed. As we go through, this is what we put in our annual report. This is a description of where we are at our stations. So Station 2 up there with a grade of an F, it's an F. Once we get it rebuilt, it'll go down to the bottom with 6 and new 2, and it'll be an A. And then we built that temporarily house the crew when we will be out for 14 months is the estimate from Station 2. We're moving the crew to a training building we built to temporarily house them because it was pretty close to the cost of what it was going to cost us for a modular to put it all in and then haul the modular off. So that'll help improve the training center because we'll have ADA compliant bathrooms and other pieces of that. So this last bit of investment to rebuild Station 2 will bring all the fire stations into alignment for many years to come. The only one that's out there that's somewhere that, down the range is as I've talked to the city manager and them of planning some investment into 3s to remodel it is, in that 5-year, somewhere between 2030, is a much better investment than what we have a tendency here to do in the past. We left Bullard in Fowler and we rebuilt a new Station 1. We seem to rebuild 2s and we built Station 6. I don't want to see us have to build Station 7 and rebuild Station 3. So we put some money into it to remodel it, keep it there. Hopefully we can prevent ourselves from having to spend a lot of money for Station 3 being rebuilt from the ground up. But that's out there for the future. Fire engines, we've done a great investment from City Council. We've done a really nice job of where we were really behind after the last recession. And if you see it there, we've got several A's up there. We have one more that'll be delivered later this year. The only downside to that is with all the ARPA funds that are out there, the manufacturers are not expanding their plants because they know it's one-time money. There's only like 4 or 5 fire engine manufacturers in the United States, so they've done a nice job of raising their costs. Inflation has definitely hit that business cycle, but the same aspect is they're not building anything bigger, so it's currently 37 months. So order it today, pay us your money, and we'll deliver it to you sometime around 37 months from now. So put that in perspective, we ordered 23, we won't see it till 26. But there's really no other alternative to us. So they have us kind of where they are, and they know that that money from the ARPA is going to run out. So in turn, there's no point for them to build where they are. And then the other thing that we really look at is just how do we compare? And we really try to compare to somewhat what's around, but really we try to really look at that Modesto to Bakersfield, what's in the Central Valley, what's our true economics and marketplace. And as you see there, you look at where we are, the far right, who's accredited, it's just us. What's your ISO rating, which we're at 2. We're, equal or higher than most people. What's our firefighter per 1,000? How many sworn personnel? And then what's our dollar cost per capita? And if you look at us, we get a pretty good bang for our buck of where we are. The average is 170. Clovis is below there at 167, and that includes all the new funding for Station 6 in it. So we've done a really nice job of holding our costs down. And if you look at that, just to kind of give you an idea on that list, do you know there's only one city up there that doesn't have a sales tax measure? And you can all guess who it is. So there's a big list of cities, and there's only one, and that's the city of Clovis. And there's 2 on there that have, actually there's 3 on there that not only have 1, they have 2. So Visalia's got 2, Tulare has 2 from a utility user tax and a sales tax, and I believe Manteca has 2, so utility user and a regular sales tax. So not that we're ever advocating for more taxes, but at the same aspect of where you are, it's an unfair fight. And then if you take where I always say we're getting here closer to the end is just to give you an idea, my fire engine price is not 400% less than, let's say, Menlo Park. Menlo Park number is $530 per person. So there's the difference of where we are. So, my salaries aren't, reduced by that much. So unfortunately, California taxation is not a fair fight in California. And that shows it every day when here's Menlo Park at $530 per capita, and we're functioning somewhere around 170 as a valley region. And it's unfortunate, just not fair of where the taxation is in the state, but our citizens demand the same service, same respect and where they want of their safe community. So it's just to kind of give you an idea on that. So where are we? All of our measure response times are increasing based on city growth. We're doing our best to try to get ourselves back within the benchmark. As the slide showed, we only have 68 or 67 today compared to where we were in 08 with 68. So, and we're still lower than other comparable cities. And my administrative staff is definitely below where they were. Back in 08, there was 9 administrative staff. Today, I only have 6. And really, that number is more like 5.5 because I only have a half-time logistics officer. But he's the hardest working 66-year-old that we could possibly have. Developer impact fees do not keep up with the cost of building a fire station. Even we've done a great job since I've been here of increasing them, but we just don't get enough. You never keep up with inflation. So just so we're aware of, even if you got the right number every time and adjusting it, we're just not keeping up with inflation. So the dollar we put in for a station we build about every 15 years, that dollar we put in the first year based on that cost is not going to equate at the end over here. So there's just no good mechanism for the inflation factor. Again, one of the things we talked about is just remodeling Station 3 out there and then figure Station 7, if we manage to continue at 800 units, especially the north, would be 2035. And then fire fleet costs and where we are. We drive big, expensive red fire engines. The costs have dramatically gone up. I don't have a better idea of anything else to try. Other people have tried like a squad or other vehicle, but it doesn't get rid of the fire engine, so all you actually did was increase costs. You still have some people on the fire engine, now you've just added a squad on top of it, so the replacement's going to be the same and you're just adding more overall cost. We need approximately $850,000 a year for the fleet to maintain it. Bless you. And then last but not least, like you said, is that I am retiring in July. This has been the biggest honor of my life to be the fire chief of the city of Clovis, and I could not say more of what a great place it's been to work. It was a dream since I got here, and Mayor Ashbeck, I won't, hold it against you that apparently in 1992, when I was trying to be a firefighter, that you didn't let me go through after the Personnel Commission. So I won't, hold that totally against you. But I always thought I'd have a big belt buckle. I was a guy from Southern California, so working in Kingsburg, so here you go.
But wait, I was not on the Personnel Commission in 1992.
You weren't?
No, I was on the Personnel Commission from 87 to 89.
Oh, then see, you're free.
See, it wasn't my fault. Oh,
see, it wasn't even you.
I was feeling really bad.
It wasn't even you.
Someone else.
So I'll have to find out who that really was.
Wasn't me.
The dream was all the way back then in 1992. It took me till the early 2000s here to come along, but it's been one of the greatest places to work. The staff is such a team to work with and everything else. It really is. And I've worked in a lot of cities, and there's a lot of crazy train out there, and I'll tell you right now, Clovis is the best place that I've ever worked in my career. I've totally enjoyed it. It's just been a pleasure to be here, and it'll be sad, but it's time to go.
Yeah. Well, we're not going anywhere yet, so we'll save the too much nice things right now because the PowerPoint was a little long.
I'm sorry. Again, I don't really think I'm on there other than budget, so we should be good.
Oh, no. You'll find something else. Any questions for our chief? I have just one quick question. I've asked this before, but would we ever see a day, or I don't know if it's a trend, but would we ever construct a fire station plan where the builders of a neighborhood built the station while they were building their homes, like they put in sewer and water infrastructure, and then they get paid back with development fees as growth around them occurs. I've had some express that they would rather do it that way because they get better service for their new neighborhood, and they're already out there with all their crews. And I know the standards are not the same, but I mean, is that a possibility ever? Do you think?
I would tell you 99% no, because of 4 different issues. But the first one is technically you still have to have a say in it. You want it to be built what you are, so your savings of prevailing wage and stuff wouldn't occur. So in order to comply with the laws, we'd still have to pay the full amount. And then the developer's out that money and wants to be reimbursed, so they're saying, why are they? 2 is where you see it is there isn't anything, even like Harlan Ranch that was planned, that one developer built. We don't have big areas that one developer built. So how do you wind up with sharing those costs with other developers? That's how we run through the developer impact fees, the only way to do it. There isn't anybody who's going to come in there and take like a southeast section of basically 25,000 residents and says, I'm going to build it all. So how do you get the joint
Well, but
funds?
but we don't have, most of our neighborhoods are not built by, I mean, we have many sections of town with multiple builders in them. So the first one out pays the steep price, right? They got to drag the pipe and all that. But over time, then people fill in. And I mean, I don't know. My sister lives in the Bay Area, and that's how they built their fire station. I've said it before. I just think I don't know if there are any models. I guess maybe the question is, as you look at the universe of city fire stations, are there other models to keep up? Because we're not keeping up, I guess is the point. And then we end up where we are now, with a station that has to be torn down.
To keep up with the current is really the ones I've only seen is they have additional revenue through taxation, and in turn they're able to put that to work and do it. We're fortunate that we have the ARPA funds to really help assist with the payment of Station 2. If not, we'd have to go to the bond market to be able to find that payment. There's just not enough at the end of the day for the services we're required to provide. There isn't enough left over to set aside for those big capital projects, and that's where we run into run into issues. And developers are only going to pay for dues. So remember, we built Station 6 out of developer impact fees, which we borrowed part of that money from the TCP fund because we still didn't have enough. But once that's built, all the maintenance, all the crews, it paid for that first fire engine that's out there. But in 15 years, that fire engine needs to get replaced. It's back onto the local taxpayers that are out there to pay for it. So you get that one time of the developers paying for it, but then after that, it's the local taxpayers' responsibility to maintain it, pay for it, move it on from there.
Well, and the CFDs have not really done what they were supposed to do either. We've talked about that before. They don't generate enough money either, so. All right.
Well, I live in a CFD. What's ironic is I pay like $455 for my landscaping, and I pay like $272 for public safety. So barely.
It looks good when the fire truck goes.
Exactly. So we didn't really kind of keep up with public safety.
Yeah,
but
I'm not sure how that happened.
Scott's crew and the people do an excellent job on the flowers and the trees and stuff. So, and at the end of the day, that's what everybody likes and brings and knows what Clovis is.
Until they call 911, then they don't care about their landscaping for sure. All right, Chief, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'll stay here and introduce Chad for the next item.
Oh, really? I was going to skip the next item. Just kidding, Chad. All right, and our final item tonight is there any comment on the fire chief report? Sorry. Anyone online?
No.
Great.
No one wanted to hear from me.
We did.
I know, it's a shocker.
Let me just read up number 9 into the record. Item number 9 is to consider approving the Director of Emergency Services request for the City Council to declare a local emergency due to the impacts of the severe winter storms and flooding. Chief and...
So Chad is our emergency manager who oversees our emergency operation plan, makes sure the EOC is outfitted. He got us the reimbursement through FEMA for some of the costs that we associated due to masking and plexiglass and some of those things for COVID. And I kind of want to set the stage for this this is how we dealt with emergencies prior to COVID with these types of declarations where we are. So let's not, we're kind of going back to the way things were prior to COVID when we talk about emergencies. So, I'll turn it over to Chad.
Thank you, Chief. So, again, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I will keep this brief to 45 slides. As you're all aware, the storms that started to hammer California began in late December. Those impacted a number of communities across the state, with 90% of California having been under storm warnings of some type since late December and into early January up until last weekend. We've seen 3 to 6 inches of rainfall throughout the state. A lot of coastal communities, but even inland region communities within the Central Valley were impacted by those storms. That being said, as Chief pointed out, unlike prior emergencies, particularly COVID in particular, this declaration of emergency is really fiscally based. And what we're doing here by asking you to declare a state of emergency is opening the doors to receive monies from the state in the event that they become available, both for the agency costs as a city and potentially individual assistance monies, as is pointed out here, for businesses or community members who may be impacted. Now, I should asterisk this to say there is no guarantee that these monies are going to be available. However, from a fiduciary responsibility side, it's in the best interest of the community to have a declaration so that we can manage our own receipt and disbursement of funds in coordination with what we've expended, in particular public utilities having bore the lion's share of the response since late December. Fresno County declared on the 9th, and the state has declared on the 4th, both of them going back to the late December date. And again, for us at the local level, this is fiduciary based. As Chief pointed out, COVID-19 was not the best example of a local emergency declaration. Some of you that were here remember the orders and things that rolled out so rapidly required this continuous adaptation by municipal government to keep up with Cal OSHA and the disparate messaging that was coming out from the state through various agencies. And so at that time, you know, as the Emergency Services Director, Luke Serpa had to come back repeatedly to talk about implementing, rescinding, and modifying. That is not the case here. So much not the case that we're actually putting a firm end to the declaration on January 31st of this year because the weather forecasts don't foresee any further impacts from these storms. Again, it ends the 31st of this month. We don't anticipate, I've talked to City Manager and Chief, there aren't going to be orders coming back that we can see where we would need further intervention or approval from the City Council to declare. And while no funding is currently available, there are already phone calls scheduled and meetings with Cal OES to look at and assess what are the needs at the local level, the county, and the region. And at that point, we will then begin to see what monies become available. And we're already working with Public Utilities Director Riddell to ensure we get our lion's share of those costs. That's the end of staff's presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Chad. Questions for Chad? Good job as always.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. We're going to end this on the 23rd?
The 31st of January.
And in the event that we had because sometimes we'll have a holiday and it'll be 2, maybe 3 weeks sometimes before council meets. Does the city manager have the ability to re-up that so that we could, or do we have to have a special meeting to do that?
In this case, the way the resolution is worded, it has a date certain of ending on the 31st, so a special meeting would be required if we were to choose to extend that out.
I believe the city manager, I'll go back to David since he was there, but I believe the city manager can extend it for council then to ratify within 7 days. So your February meeting would get you within the 7 days.
What I'm getting at is the atmospheric river hits us this time, and it hits us Tuesday because we're meeting, not Wednesday because we're meeting tonight, and we're not going to meet for another 2 weeks. Do we have a mechanism other than calling a meeting, a special meeting to deal with that one item? Does the city manager have the ability to declare the emergency?
Tonight we'll declare it. It'll go to the 31st.
Yeah, I'm talking, it's February, and we have our last meeting in February, and we get just nailed with storm after storm after storm before the council meets again. Do we have to redeclare this emergency, or can that be done by the city manager in an emergency?
And just to clarify, is that I could have actually called this emergency and brought this back to you to ratify it?
That Answers my question.
Which is what we
Thank
did
you.
in 2020 when Luke called it and
Right.
council ratified it. But we don't anticipate the weather forecast, anything looks pretty good. This is just to have something in place through the end of January. And if we got hit with another weather storm on February 1st, we would regroup and consider just calling it again and bringing it back to council on February 6th.
And for council's clarification, if you were wondering, have we ever declared or recouped under similar circumstances, that is yes. In 2006, we did a declaration and applied for public assistance monies to the tune of about $11,000. I went back and looked at what we did then. So this is not the first time that we've done a declaration of this type in order to ensure we get state and federal monies as it becomes available.
Good. Other questions, Vaughn?
Chad, if we don't declare, does that disqualify us from receiving funds? Is there that caveat?
The declaration is under Fresno County at the moment. We would be a subgrantee, and I would suggest that the short answer is no, but, asterisk, it would take us a lot longer because as a subgrantee under the county, you're then submitting your paperwork and unable to deal directly with FEMA and Cal OES in order to rapidly get those funds into the city. So as a subgrantee under the county, you're kind of at their workflow, for lack of a better term, to get that reimbursement. This provides a much more efficient means to recoup our monies.
Personally, I do not like the way it's going, where it's all tied to getting reimbursements, declaring emergencies, and then taking the power away from this body and the people. Not that we abuse it, but, going straight to one person being able to make orders. That is my hesitation all the time. I know that we are assured that there won't be any orders, and that is what I want to assure our public, that we will not abuse it. But at the same time, I do not like the process. But you're saying it's our fiduciary duty to do it, and because of that, I think it's prudent that we do it at the same time.
Thanks. Any other comments?
Yeah. Just one clarification with the certain end date of January 31st, that would just be for any events that occurred. If there were delays in the funding being available, that certainly has no mark on our ability to request the funding, seek it out. It's just the events themselves that would put us in a position to look for the funding, correct?
That is correct. So to your point, Councilmember Pierce, the funding mechanism will be a longer process, but it captures what you described as the events that occurred from the late December to the end of January. Sometimes the monies can take a little bit of time to come back through.
Anything else? Yeah. All right. Chad, thank you so much. Anyone in the public wanting to comment on this item? Online?
No.
All right. I'll bring it back to the council. Would entertain a motion or some other action?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to declare the emergency due to the impacts of severe winter storms and flooding.
Okay, thanks. Second? Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Well done, and not 45 slides. Nice.
Next time.
Good job. Oh, gosh. You're not retiring, though, so you got a long time to spread those out. Thank you both. City manager comments.
Just real quickly, a couple things. I woke up this morning and opened up the newspaper.
So great.
And I noticed Chief Fleming walking in the front of the parade yesterday with, I was going to say Governor Dyer, with Mayor Dyer.
He only could wish. Bless him.
I couldn't be more proud of my police department. Over the weekend, they spent quite a bit of time supporting the Martin Luther King Committee. Chief Fleming was honored for public service by the City of Fresno Dr. Martin Luther King Committee. There was a very nice event that some of you attended on Friday night where he did receive the recognition. And also on Saturday, the police department supported the MLK breakfast for the 18th year in a row. A significant amount of work. It was a nice event, and I just want to praise the chief in person and also the police department because it was a lot of work to support the weekend. In addition to that, next slide please, in addition to that, similar to what you saw before, is going to be that a lot of rain followed by a lot of wind equals a lot of trees down. We were notified early yesterday morning with 40-mile-an-hour winds around the city that I'm saying for the city, we're pretty severely impacted, but our public utilities crew, in addition to the police department and the fire department, responded and did a great job. And special call out to public utility crews who spent about 12 hours yesterday cleaning up the streets and making them responding to complaints. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Ditto. Well done. Well done. Vong was also in that picture, the parade picture. Council comments. Diane?
I just want to echo what our city manager said, and the MLK Community Breakfast was a great event, and it was great to have all of us there together, I think, to support that. I think it speaks highly of our city's involvement in that committee and that event. And then also, again, just echoing those same sentiments about city staff and how quickly they've been out there handling things. I've heard from a number of people who have had issues and they've been so quickly addressed, and that's just been really encouraging. So kudos to all of you working so hard around the clock during these severe storms and all the impacts that we see from that. So thank you.
Thanks. Matt?
For me, I'm going to Sacramento tonight to go to the League of Cities meeting.
So you're going to hope that there's one of those 24-hour liquor stores open or whatever.
When we have to travel to Sacramento, fire needs to go on the agenda the next week. I'm just kidding again. No, I'm going to the League of Cities new council members, what you're supposed to do and not do meeting. So I'll be going to that tonight as soon as we're done, and I'll be there for the next 3 days.
Safe travels, please. Drew?
I would also join in on congratulations to the police department and Chief Aaron Ford, who has done an excellent job with this, and George Rodriguez. And I also want to throw a shout out to Jim Zolam, who is the person that got us involved in showcasing the MLK breakfast in, I think, 2003. If I remember correctly. So this is it speaks to the history of our efforts to recognize a great American. That's all I have.
It's true. Vong?
I think I want to echo the same things. Congratulations, Chief, on the award on Friday night. And I appreciate what you said up there, you know, actually putting into the spotlight that sometimes the perception of Clovis is not the reality. And I think our work with you, getting the award with the department, George and Aaron, like you said, always being involved, putting up, you know, very, very good breakfast every year that I have attended is a testament to our ability to work with everyone. And then also earlier this morning with the department standing against human trafficking, the press conference, and Chief being there and standing for that. I just wanted to say that, you know, all of us can donate to that. It's at www.p2st.org, and it's to raise funds. So because it's a collaborative effort with all the organizations we recognized last Monday to the police departments all around the Central Valley. Let's really get that word out, educate people, but also try to put a stop to that. And then for the walk itself, I think it's always good to see, you know, 10, 15 of our officers out like that. I mean, we don't see that from Fresno, and every year we go, we always have a good showing supporting the walk. So thank you for that.
And I'll just echo all of those things that people said. It was really it was a wonderful moment, and it was, as pointed out, it was fun to outnumber the Fresno council members at your ceremony on Friday night. So there are more of us than them, so I sort of thought that was fitting. But well done, Chief, and all of you. And I'll just report out that I did attend a COG meeting, and it was just a regular meeting about the COVID meeting, so nothing much. All right, that concludes our public agenda tonight. We will move into closed session. As David reported earlier, we will not be taking action and reporting that out. Is that correct?
Correct. We're going to go into closed session as identified on the agenda. There will not be any reporting out tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
No action will be taken.
And it is Vong's birthday soon. When's your birthday?
The 19th.
How old are you going to be? Okay, like 39? So there's cake back there, so take home to your kids. I think